Hey everyone, welcome back to Shigaraki today. We have an amazing story on what if Deku inherited the throne of a dead multiverse before UA. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. Now, let us jump straight into the video. In one of the quiet neighborhoods on the northern end of the city of Mizutofu, host of the best heroic high school program of East Japan, there is a huge mansion constructed in the traditional Japanese style. This is the Midoriya residence, property of Inko Midoriya, mother and successful lawyer for 4 years now. Since her divorce, the once soft-spoken and emotional housewife has turned a new leaf, and if she has anyone to thank for that, it's her son. Speaking of said son, Izuku Midoriya woke up at the crack of dawn, as was his routine since he began middle school. Rubbing his eyes to get the remnant of sleep out of his system, the teenager began to make his way to the dojo to get his morning training session. The dojo was certainly the largest room of the mansion and could have at least 3 pair practice kendo, without fear of being a nuisance to the others, but it was certainly well equipped and maintained. The routine was the same since Izuku turned 11, starting with some stretches and a 10-minute run as a warm-up. He would continue with swords to perfect his style in kendo with repetitive movements for an hour, altering the katas, then going from a shurnai to a bakkin. He began his training in Iaido, following the 4-step process of drawing the sword, cutting with the sword, cleaning the blade, and returning the sword. He then switched to the practice of his skill with the spear for another half an hour, chaining the different spear thrust into deadly combos onto the training dummy. Those were the 3 bases of his fighting style when it came to weapon. Finally came the last part of his morning training before breakfast, his most dreaded exercise Kyudo, the practice of archery. Taking the necessary equipment, Izuku readied himself for this part, promising himself that he would success today and thought of the different steps to take to accomplish his training. Ashibomi. Placing himself at the firing line, Izuku's position shifted until he was sure that his posture formed a straight line from his shoulders to his feet. Dozakuri. Now that his form was good, Izuku started to ready the bow, turning his head to face the target and raise the arrow in the bow above his head. Ukiokoshi. Pulling the bowstring with his right hand and pushing the bow with his left one away from him, he accomplished the 5th step. Haikiwake, so far so good, thought the green-eyed boy. He completed the movement, he started to its fullest, and he could see that his aim, the line he set up since Ashibomi, hasn't changed at all from what he could get from his arrow. Keikai mentally chanted Izuku before gulping. The arrow flew from the bow toward the target gracefully and totally missed the target. Hanar. Izuku's eyes fixed upon the arrow, buried into the ground as if it had ignored every effort he put into this shot. Zanshin. He tried to remain strong, but with this failure, his concentration was slowly cracking, and his mind began to wander toward distant memories. Flashback 10 years ago. Izuku was amazed. With his quirk and the help of some mysterious old wizard, he just summoned a hero, someone so great, famous and powerful that they had a dimension that acknowledged those exploits and recorded them forever and ever. That was so cool. EMIY was in a bad situation, or so should any situation that involved the wizard marshal was supposed to be. He never encountered the man before he became a counter guardian, but he heard enough story at the clock tower to know the rule: if the old man of the jewels is interested in you, nothing can be done for you. The guy was a dimension traveler and had kicked the ass of the fucking moon while he was still human. So the guy was already pretty insane, and the age didn't remove this trait of him apparently. And what kind of plot did he put me in? Thought the man, once known as Shiro Amiya, before he felt a hand pull on his red coat. And Mr. Who are you exactly? Zelrich San said you were a hero, but I don't know you at all, said a green-haired kid that couldn't be older than 5. Name Semiya. Zelrich told you that a hero would come. Why, he almost cringed at the hope in the boy's tone. Had the child not been taught the rule of stranger danger at his age, especially if said stranger happened to be an eccentric magician with too much of a passion when it came to messing with people and magical girls. WL, he said something about how my quirk is connected to a place called the Throne of Heroes, and that I should train to be both a magus and a hero, and that he would use a magical ritual to summon a hero. And the archer class servant toned down the rambling of the boy, who seemed to be too high on excitement to give a proper explanation and to focus his attention on the letter that Zelrich had thrown at him before disappearing in a flash of rainbow light. Dear Shiro Yemgwae, when you read this letter, it means that Kishter Zelrich Schweinorg has granted you a wonderful opportunity, the termination of your occupation as a counter-guardian. You see, a disciple of mine and an old girlfriend of yours, Rinto Saka, explained to me how you, as a servant during the Holy Grail War, tried to commit a form of time paradox suicide to negate your own existence, because Aleya is a bitch when it comes to retirement policies for those who form a pact with it. To this, I find myself thinking that the Tosaka girl is right. You are an idiot. An imbecile. M-O-R-O-N-Baka. I can still hear the hour-long Ren about how the you of this time decided to follow the same path, even with a warning from the actual you. To make her shut up, stop pestering me about it, I decided to intervene and finally found you a way out. You see, in this universe, a phenomenon occurred around 200 years ago. For the common people, it was a fun fact about how a glowing baby was born. To the more mystical side of the spectrum, you could say something just kept pressing the shitstorm button until everything exploded, but the gist of it is that almost every magi communities and families has been wiped out. Same can be said about creatures of the moonlit world, such as the Dead Apostle, but the most peculiar fact is that Gaia and Aleya are in double KO, where neither of them can do anything about magecraft or others things, but since there is nothing left of the mystical world, it shouldn't be a problem, but Aleya managed to find an opportunity to give humanity superpowers as if this world is a comic book. They are called quirks and are genetically influenced, and no one had a relevance to magecraft, mysteries, or the sorts until I stumble upon this boy, Izuku Midoriya. From this world scientific consensus, the boy is without quirk, which is getting rarer and rarer and represent around 20 of the world population those days. But considering that this boy fate is strong in a lot of parallels of this one, I looked a little deeper and found his quirk, a rarity that managed to surprise even me. The boy is connected to the Ring of Deterrence, to the Throne of Heroes, at a level that my true magic can hardly manage and that my injuries prevent me to attempt. With the Summon Servant ritual, the boy is not linked to a copy that would forget their experience with him, but to a body where the fate of the heroic spirit itself will be influenced. If you really want to get away from Aleya-esque grasp, then I suggest that you tag along with this boy, teach him how to be a proper magus, and mostly how to be a proper hero to attain the throne. That's the only way he will be able to save you, but also to save himself. You knew one of the cruelest fate possible counter-guardian EMIY, so I want you to hear this one and only warning. If the boy were to stray away from this path, then he would know an end worse than the eternity of servitude that you suffered. I'll let you learn the rest along the way. Good luck, and try to enjoy this new chance at life. Yemiye groaned when he finished his reading. Of course, Rin would get the attention of someone like Zelrich, and of fucking course the idiot that was Shiro Amiya would go chasing after his ideals. He sighs and turns back his attention to the boy. He couldn't wrap his head around the idea. This kid had a soul so close to the Throne of Heroes that he could actually influence them. The thought of what the Mage-S association of his world would have done to him was honestly terrifying. At least there should be no Holy Grail War, so I can think of it as a vacation if anything. The last part of the letter was ominous to say the least, and if Zelrich was comparing the possibility of the boy not becoming a heroic spirit being worse than the things he had to do as a beast of Aleya, he would have to take measures and fast. Amiya-sen, shouted Izuku, seeing the red-cladded man to focus on the letter. Very well, I have been informed of your situation, he said, crumbling the letter before tossing it to a nearby trash can. He remembered an old memory. something a woman in blue armor said to him while he laid on the floor of his shed. It was proper etiquette after all, so he towered over the boy in the setting sun and posed one question. I ask of you, are you my master? At this moment, Izuku didn't fully understand the implication of such words, but the feelings that they stirred in him, he would never be able to forget them. He looked in awe at the steel-colored-eyed man, a hero that recognized the supposed quirkless boy who everyone scorns as if he was someone important, as someone with a role to play and worth in living. So, with tears in his eyes, he answered, "Yes, present day." This was his starting line, his first step into a world of mysteries and legends, but Izuku never regretted the path he was on. Did he doubt his powers and his worth as a person? As a potential hero, absolutely, but he never desired to stray from this path and decided to pass every obstacle that would stand in his way. Growl. But first, it was time for breakfast. After all, Nissan said at times, and times again, hunger is the enemy. Making his way to the bathroom, Izuku crossed path with the person on breakfast duty for the whole family this morning, his first servant, his teacher in so many things, his brother figure, and the one person who made him who he was today, heroic spirit Emiya, or Shiro Amiya, whenever he had to interact with people outside of the family. Currently clad in a dark green kimono, the once counter guardian was right on the clock, as always seeing that it was 7:00 a.m. Good morning, Nissan, he said with a wide smile. What are we having for breakfast today? The silver-haired man looks at him with his sharp steel-colored eyes, and in a biting tone of voice remarked more than asked, not even one in the target today, yeah. Izuku flinched. He knew what the archer-class servant was trying to do, but he would not back down, and so responded, why, yes. Emiya let his gaze linger on his master for a moment longer before making his way toward the kitchen. I see. Take a shower, then wake the others up. Breakfast starts in 40 minutes. Izuku made his way to the bathroom and quickly cleaned himself up. If 40 minutes would seem too much to wake 5 people up, then you didn't know who lived at the Midoriya residence at all. He decided he would start by the easiest to wake up and directed himself toward one of the 7 chambers that the residents counted. Okay, here we go, he muttered under his breath. One-chan, are you awake? He asked, standing in front of the door. When he heard some groaning from the other side, he decided it was safe to go in and help his second servant to wake up. Entering the room, Izuku was assaulted by the different fragrance of all the brews the woman passed her time making in her room. Odors of all sorts who didn't make a particularly unpleasant scent, but it was what he associated this person with, the odor of potions and mysteries, the odor of plants and herbs that would not exist in this era, if not for her. He set his gaze upon the woman sleeping against a wall, a black cape being used as her blanket. Resting in a purple robe, which bordered more on the dark blue under the sun with the glow of a golden accessories in the center of her chest. Her visage sloppily hidden under a black hood that outlined the details of a woman in her mid-20s that can best be described as an elven beauty. Her silky blue hair flowing like a river under the rhythm of her soft breathing. A single braid could be seen behind her pointy knife-like ear, a pointed chin that completed the beauty of her heart-shaped face, her lips a deep shade of purple. A small smile blossomed on his face at the sight of the caster-class servant sleeping so peacefully, but he is a man on a mission and call out to her. One-chan, it's time for breakfast, wake up. He gently shakes her by the shoulder. Good morning. Izuku-sama, respond the Princess of Colchis with a smile on her sleepy face, her blue-violet eyes fixed upon him as she assessed her surrounding and relaxed. Izuku can't help but appreciate the warm feeling of those eyes and to remember the day he met her, Medea of Colchis, the one known as the Witch of Betrayal. Flashback 8 years ago. During the 2 years after the summoning of his first servant, Izuku Midoriya received the basic knowledge on most of the magecraft that Emiya could provide him with structural analysis. Reinforcement and projection were the things that Emiya had the most experience with, and Izuku, with his passion for all things related to quirks, managed to get the hang of them easily enough, even if he couldn't seem to access the full potential of his magic circuits. Emiya couldn't determine if it was the effect of his quirk, the absence of Gaia, or the fact that he acted effectively as the Greater Grail would during a Grail war, by serving as the main source of prana for the servants. But it seemed that he wouldn't be able to access his full potential as a magus from start. Magus, or a user and researcher of magecraft, the reenactment of mysteries. In the mind of a 4-year-old kid, he was about to learn magic. Izuku had a really hard time trying to explain to his mom how he was quirkless that night when he came back home 2 years prior. His mom crying a river because he was 2 hours late and the Bakugo's son didn't know where he was, saying that his friends and Izuku parted ways quite some time ago. To say she was skeptic when Izuku came back with a bright smile talking about how an old wizard showed him that he apparently had a quirk and that magic was real, or that he could summon heroes of old was an understatement, and she believed that her son was coping with his quirklessness by playing pretend. That is until a stranger in red armor materialized on her couch, as if he owned the place in a show of blue light. "Good evening, Miss Midoriya. First and foremost, what your son said is true. He does have a quirk." Inko immediately entered full Mother Bear mode, as Mitsuki Bakugo called it, dragging her son behind her with her quirk and grabbing a frying pan with the other hand. "Who are you? What are you doing here? How did you get here?" The man looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "My name is Emiya. As of right now, I am the servant of your son, an archer-class servant, and I got here by the door. If you didn't see me, it's because servant possess what we call astral bodies. We can turn invisible to lessen the cost to maintain us in this world that our master, in this instance your son, pays this way." Realization sunk in and Inko relaxed just a little. Quirks were weird like that. Heck, apparently one of her old high school acquaintances had a son whose shadow was not only alive, but had a different personality than her son. If this being claimed to be a part of her son's quirk, well, she would roll with it for the time being. "Okay, what do you want with my son exactly?" As Zelrich, the old wizard that your son met, said to him, "His quirk is of a nature completely different from what this world knows of, and doesn't have a direct consequence upon the body, or is surrounding like breathing fire, making explosions with your palms, or the super strength of the one called All Might. Zelrich warned me that the boy will need to become a hero to avoid something terrible. And by something terrible, I mean something that can be worse than a personal hell." "What do you mean by that?" she asked, clutching her baby boy to reassure herself that no harm could happen to him and that he was fine. The man seemed to ponder for some time before continuing. "Miss Midoriya, I normally don't like to talk about the path that lead me to become a hero. The tale isn't exactly a happy one. Maybe you should put the boy to bed before we continue," he said, pointing to a sleeping Izuku, whose tiresome day was finally catching up with the child body. "And if what I suspect happened, then you'll need to understand what your son will be exposed to." That night, Izuku dreamt of many things. A horrible fire that seemed to devour everything that stood in his way. The cries for help of the people. A lone boy, not much older than him, who sacrificed everything he had just to live one more moment. A man with dead eyes who smiled seeing that he managed to save at least one person. And a question: would I be this happy if I saved someone? Izuku didn't know the extent of what Emiya and his mother discussed that night, but she seemed to accept the reality of his claims, and to his surprise, even accepted to let him learn magic or magecraft as his servant insisted it was called. Izuku was good apparently. Emiya estimated that he could have been a first-rate magus in his world, but that he would never be able to learn correctly because Emiya was never that great of a magus in his life, and decided to stick to the basis of the basis until he was at a decent level, but his progress were getting slower and slower. From what Izuku could get from his dreams, the story of how a young man became involved in a great conflict between legends for the sake of a wish, he understood what his servant meant more or less, but he didn't understand what he and the other 2 girls did in that old church, and something told him that he should never ask his mom what it was under any circumstance. However, this changed one day when Izuku asked a simple question: "What if I summoned another?" Asked the former counter-guardian after he finished to clean the dishes of the green-haired duo and himself upon the insistence of Izuku that he should eat with them. What if I summoned another servant, a servant to help me learn magecraft that you couldn't teach me? Izuku elaborated. That could work actually, but I will supervise because not all heroic spirit will have the patience to deal with a 6-year-old master. Yemaiwae remarked. Yes, we're doing it tonight. I can't wait to see what I can learn from a real magician, not that you aren't a good magician, Amiya and I, exclaimed Izuku, realizing how his phrasing sounded. Yemaiwae let out a small chuckle at that, but accepted nonetheless. 2 hours later. Yemaiwae should never have accepted that idea. Why? Oh, why didn't he asked who his master had decided to summon before he let him do his thing? If he did, his master wouldn't be held by the throat by a not-so-unfamiliar caster. Her bronze dagger, normally of no use against the kind of opponent she faced in a Grail war, being more than enough to slice the throat of the kid before his arrow could pierce all her magical defenses and end her. Izuku's POV. Your fate is under me. My salvation is in your sword. Upon the rule of the righteous heir, if you so desire, then answer. Here is my one and true oath. I am the one who shall save all of the world of the dead. I am the one who will bring evil to its final place. You, 7 heavens clad in 3 words of power, emerge from the ring of deterrence, O keeper of the balance. From the summoning circle, a figure emerged behind the smoke and the blue sparks of prana. Izuku had seen her in his dreams, in the past life of his servant, a magus from the Age of Gods that managed to hurt a lot of people during the Grail War, including his other servant and his friends. However, in the dream cycle, Izuku's perception of the event showed something that no one seemed to comprehend of Caster, no one except her master. If he had to give a reason as to why he could perceive it this way, Izuku would say it was his origin of salvation. When he woke up after seeing the aftermath of his servant's younger self upon the raided temple, he realized the sad fate that Caster and her master knew while seeking forgiveness. Hero like villain, at the end of the day, everyone prays for salvation was the right, no, the only way he could describe what he saw in those people. This feeling prompted Izuku to reach for his quirk in the throne, searching for this person in particular, because if what he had seen and read about this person was correct, then he would try to give her this chance at salvation. Servant Caster, the witch of betrayal, I ask of you, are you my master? Said a soft feminine voice behind the cloud of prana that the summoning brought. Why, yes, declared Izuku, looking upon the face of his new servant, clad in the purple robe and the black hood that he already saw in his dreams. Princess Medea of Kalkis. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Medea blinked under her hood before looking down, seeing a boy no older than 6, like someone she knew, with big round eyes looking at her with a glint that she had seen before, like someone she betrayed, and with a wide smile full of innocence, like someone she killed. Absurdist, she whispered. This was not possible. She remembers exactly what she did to her younger brother, how she killed him, how she sliced him up like an animal before the eyes of her father under the orders of that man, and the horrible curse before throwing his remains from the Argo. She was sure that her brother couldn't have made it back to the cycle of life and reincarnation, as he didn't get a proper burial. Medea, San Izuku was tense. He had made his research, but he wasn't expecting that she would confuse him with her younger brother, a brother that she killed. He seriously doubted his choice of putting Archer some distance away with an arrow at the ready to have the surprise effect, if need be. Medea chuckled darkly. She had figured it out now. Someone was pulling a trick on her, and her master had to be an illusion that used her memories to trick her. No more. The witch of betrayal didn't have the patience to deal with a low blow like using a child, her so innocent little brother's face even less so, to play with her. And so, she acted. She seized the boy by the throat and lifted the child before drawing a bronze dagger from within her robe. Her noble phantasm, everything her legend represented and aspired to be rule breaker, the negation of all spells. Midia Essen. Calm down, please, the child cried. Archer, Don T. Shoot. Archer, so there was already a servant in the service of this new master of hers, she thought. Tell me, do you think it was wise to try to trick me like that, me? The witch of betrayal. Midia San, there is no trick, shouted Izuku, scared not only for himself, but also for what would happen if Emiy were to shoot a noble phantasm at the Magus that hold him as a hostage. Lies, tell me why I was summoned in this realm. You filthy illusion, she shouted, the dagger approaching his skin more and more. Because I wanted to save you, Izuku shouted, closing his eyes before feeling the grip of the servant weaken. What Midia murmured, save me from what? Izuku looked her in the eyes, or where he thought her eyes were supposed to be, and explained, I'm connected to the throne of heroes. My own soul is so close to it that when I summon a servant, they can change. Heroes that knew a tragic end have a chance in this world. They get chance at salvation. I know what you did, what happened to you, and what you want me, Dia-san. I want to save you no matter if you decide to betray me after that. I'm not sure if you need or want help, but I want to be a hero. Meddling in other people's business even when not needed. That's what a hero does, please. Me, Dia-san, let me help you. The princess of Colchis was befuddled by the child before her. The conviction in his voice honestly shook her, and the promise she could feel coming from him as she focused on the connection between them made her aware of feelings the witch of betrayal had discarded a long time ago. Trust. Sincerity. Hope. She had another chance. She probably would never get a chance to ask for forgiveness to her father or her people. They were dead for too long, but she could finally be free from the pains of her past if only she trusted this one time. She was broke out of her reverie by the glow of the morning sun on the place her master had used for her summoning. A beach, a beautiful beach that brought up so many memories of her homeland. She chuckled, what a cute master I have. You really played all out to ask me out, didn't you? She said with a teasing tone, pulling back her hood. Izuku's face turned red, not only at the comment or at the now revealed beauty, but mostly at the expression on the servant's face, the smile that she gave him. She seemed more relaxed and far more hopeful than at the start of this whole ordeal. He took the hand of the princess and said to her with a bright smile, let us go, one each on. Speaking of ordeal, he should brace himself for the scolding that his niece San and his mom will put him through for pulling a stunt like this without telling them. Midia let a small laugh escape her lips and nodded, following behind her small master, now determined to live this life to the fullest. After this, Izuku was promptly scolded by a very ticked-off Emiy. While the servant of the spell laughed at her master acting like the child he was. Speaking of this, she had remarked that her master was awfully mature for a 6-year-old. And even if his repertoire of spell wasn't that large, he was a far too high level for it to be considered natural talent. When she discovered the cause of this trait in her master's personality, she wished she didn't. The dream cycle, the access to a servant's history during the master's rest. To the master of the Holy Grail in the realm, the ritual that summoned her was created. It was mostly harmless, since the connection between masters and servants was not the full reason of the servant existence, the Grail taking the brunt of the connection away from the master. But since her master had a much deeper connection to them, it seemed that he was greatly influenced by what he saw during those dreams. It wouldn't be that bad if her master had been a fully grown magus when he first became a master, but he was a 4-year-old child when he summoned his first servant. And he had to summon someone that lived through a traumatic experience in his infancy and lived as a counter-guardian for so long that said counter-guardian didn't even remember if he should count his age in the hundreds or the thousands. Her master was twisted, but not in the same way as the one that presented himself as Emiy to her. She wasn't sure what that would entail for the boy, but this connection wasn't without benefits. Izuku-sama seemed to pick up on the teachings of his servants at an insane speed. In a month's time, he managed to use one of the spells that took her a year under the goddess Hecate to learn even if the power of the spell was horribly degraded and the speed was far too slow to be effective. But she knew that time, training, and growth would probably fix that. Also, it seems that her master was getting far above his peers in terms of intellect and grades, but his treatment was far from stellar, not only by the other student, but by the teachers as well. When she asked him about this, he responded that quirks were apparently all that mattered to those people, and that considering that his quirk could break the secrecy of magecraft, he would keep the mantle of quirkless until he needed to act as a hero. She would have agreed with him, if not for the fact that a blonde prick that reminded her of him, if not for the red eyes, was relentless in putting her master to his place, but Izuku-sama assured her with his signature smile that he would decide of a way to deal with him if they got to UA, an academy that teach students on how to become a hero. She couldn't resist the urge to laugh when she first learned of it. Heroes of her time that she had encountered weren't exactly role models, what with him having the title of Hero Scout. She doubled in laughter when Izuku-sama showed her his favorite hero, All Might. The guy was a blonde, colored Heracles for Zeus' sake muscles, on top of muscles. If it wasn't for the somewhat reassuring smile that the man had on his face, she would have felt sick with having the man as Izuku-sama's favorite thought. She would never let her sweet little master become a disgusting pile of muscle like that. Never. Flashback end. You shouldn't be up so late at night, Wani-chan, Izuku said with his mom's signature admonishing Inko pose. Yet I know Izuku-sama, but I couldn't do those particular brews any other day, she explained with a little stretch to get the remnant of sleep out of her body. Who's on breakfast duty today? It's Nii-san. Mom will be gone for the rest of the week, and will probably drag Sensei along with her. So, it's Martha-chan that will make lunch for you, and I'm in charge of tonight's diner. Medea salivated at the thought. If EMIYA and Martha's cooking were then her little master's cooking was on the way to become a before he would turn 15. Thank you, Izuku-sama. Go wake up the big lug while I go change. I will join you to the dining table. Okay, see you later, Wani-chan. Izuku replied, closing the door before making his way to the room next to Medea's. He removed the bounded field on the wall that prevented sound from coming out of the room and was met with the really loud snoring of a man. He entered the room and reapplied the bounded field. Not all the residents had to put up with how much noise Napoleon Bonaparte could make in the morning. Flashback 6 years ago. Izuku had made a huge progression in the field of magecraft, but he wanted to experiment a lot more with his quirk as to not rely only on his servants, the one he considered family. So, he set up an experiment and discovered that the origin of the summoner could be a catalyst for the summoning of a servant. With more preparation, or safety measures such as Archer watching him like a hawk, Izuku tried to summon another servant using the origin of Hero as a catalyst. Silver and Iron to the origin, Gem and the Archduke of Contracts to the cornerstone. The ancestor is my great master Schweinorg. The alighted wind becomes a wall. The gates in the 4 directions close, coming from the crown. The 3 forked road that leads to the kingdom circulate. Repeat every 5 times. Simply shatter once filled. I announce, your fate is under me. My salvation is in your sword. Upon the rule of the righteous heir, if you so desire, then answer. Here is my one and true oath. I am the one who shall save all of the world of the dead. I am the one who will bring evil to its final place. You, 7 heavens clad in 3 words of power, emerge from the ring of deterrence, O keeper of the balance. The person that was invoked was a man slightly taller than EMIYA, dressed in a half-open red shirt revealing hard pectoral muscles with numerous scars, a black vest with a high collar and large golden epaulets. A large belt fixing his white pants and black boots to go with his assemble, he looked like a commanding officer of an army. The man had bright blue eyes that shone with determination, spiky brown hair that framed the top of his head in the manner of a lion's mane, and a goatee-style beard. His booming voice resonated toward Izuku, I am the servant archer. The ideal of Napoleon, first emperor of France, the man who releases the rainbow of possibilities, and the hero of humanity who come to bring victory. I ask you if you're mon maître. Yes, Napoleon. I am Izuku Midoriya, he said, extending a hand toward the man before realizing that he got a second archer and not another class of servant like Emiya and Medea predicted. I suppose it can happen, he thought, and explained to his new servant, there is no holy grail to wish upon in this world, Napoleon. However, you can try to make another life upon this world and help me become a hero myself. The servant smiled upon hearing this, a grin that reminded Izuku of All Might with a tinge of eccentricity. Very well, Maître, I will make you a hero worthy of the light of possibilities. And with a loud thunk and a flash of rainbow, Napoleon, an archer-class servant, summoned his weapon of choice, a really big cannon. Thanks to the dream cycle, Izuku discovered that the servant he summoned was not the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte himself, but an image of Napoleon. This heroic spirit was created by his people's expectations of the first emperor of France. The legend about how a man conquered most of Europe in his life before everything went down. This Napoleon doesn't have the power that he had in his own life as a human being, but the power of his people's desire and the embodiment of every Napoleonic legends. Such an existence truly marked Izuku. A single man that changed the possibilities by his only presence. This man was the proof that you could make the impossible possible, and his smile was as bright as All Might. That's what Izuku sought to learn from Napoleon, how to be a response to expectations and how to exceed impossible. During the next 2 years, Izuku managed to gain the abilities of the servant Napoleon called Light of Possibility and Triumphant Charisma, but at the rank of E. At this level, Izuku could channel a small rainbow aura that allowed him to change the possibilities. This skill allowed him to apply some effects that weren't supposed to exist on some of his spells or techniques. As for his charisma, Izuku couldn't really manage to apply it outside of his family or people that already know of him because the stigma that quirklessness brought was something an E-rank skill couldn't counteract. This year was also the first that Izuku managed to trace actual noble phantasm, even if limited to Rule Breaker or the married twin sword, Kansho and Bakuya, the weapons of Medea and Emiya respectively. Flashback end. Izuku channeled his charisma and possibilities in his reinforcement that he applied to his throat, lung, and vocal cords before shouting in the ear of the sleeping servant. Ji-san, wake up. The servant bounced up in the air, the book that he was reading, before sleep overtook him, flying across the room and knocking one of the many pile of books the Emperor of France liked to collect in his room. Seigneur Dieu. Kid, I'm not sure I want to continue that routine anymore, Napoleon said, rubbing his ear. Nope, replied Izuku, popping the pea with a wide smile. This method of training made my charisma a D-rank skill and the light of possibility a D-rank skill. So I'm going to wake you up this way every morning, or Mom is taking your cigars again for being so hard to drag out of bed. She's your mom, not mine, you know that. Do you think it matters to her? You got me there. Is breakfast ready? Neeson should have it prepared by the time I finish to wake up everyone, so go sit at the dining table. Good luck with that kid, the man said before making his way out of his room toward the scent of food. Izuku decided that he would go with the easiest to wake up and directed himself toward the room of his latest summoned servant. Martha was a simple village girl. She had a loving family and a happy life with her brother and sister. She was the typical nice girl that you could find everywhere in the village of Bethany that was raised around warm and kind people. The only features that made her stand out from a crowd would have been her blue eyes and her long purple hair. Then he came. She had been kind to the one known as the Messiah, and the simple village girl became a person of faith. Martha became Saint Martha. She was the image of perfection both inside and outside. Beautiful, kind, chaste, gentle. He gave her a cross staff, and she started a journey. With a boat without paddle nor sail, she reached the south of France. Such a journey was supposed to be impossible, a mortal trip across the sea. But St. Martha was a holy maiden. She survived with the grace of God. From there, she reached Nurlik, where her next test of faith laid a dragon. The Tarasque, a son of Leviathan, had made his lair in the Rhone River, and she was to subjugate the beast. And again, the perfect saint succeeded in her task by bringing the dragon, who knew nothing of love and kindness, to reason. She managed to ride the dragon back to Nurlik. She was worshipped along her dragon, and the town was renamed Tarascon. Thus end the story of Saint Martha, the perfect saint, and start the story of the heroic spirit of the rider class, Saint Martha, who is currently crushing a body pillow with a force that should by all account annihilate the soft fabric. And even if those pillows were made by a magus from the age of gods, you could see the strain such a feat was putting on the enchantment. Izuka knew he was walking into hell when he stepped into the room. Martha-chan was always a force to be reckoned with, but she either hold back in permanence or her strength grew tenfold when she was asleep, because he never got closer to Death's door than he did in this room. He had to rely on all his skills and his agility to go out of this room alive and get everyone to breakfast. He reinforced his senses to the maximum, channeled the power of possibility into his body, and once again asked for a miracle. This was his very best. He was pretty sure that he could reach the parameters of a low-ranked servant with all of this, but he wasn't too sure if it would be enough to do his task without injuries. Let us do this, he pulled on Martha's favorite Dakimakura, and the enchantments that Medea developed for the purpose of separating the cuddle fiend that was Martha-chan and the pillow she guarded, as if she was a dragon protecting its hoard, did their job. Now, Martha-chan was emanating an aura that was as scary as the killing intent that Sensei could channel. Her eyes hadn't opened, but they zoomed onto him and the pillow in his hand. Now it's double or nothing. Martha-chan, wake up, he yelled, as if he was a lion in the savannah, powerful and mighty. But a lion is nothing against a dragon. Asterisk, crack, asterisk. Her arms were around his torso before he even had the time to blink, and he was pretty sure that the surprise tackle hug she was giving him had messed up a few ribs. He threw the pillow aside and decided to shake her by the shoulders. Martha-chan, wake up now. It seemed to work, as he could hear the soft groan of someone waking up. Mizuku, is that you? Yes, Martha-chan, he said, hope raising up again now. You need to let go of me and wake up. Don't wanna, she whined, snuggling closer to him. His reinforcement was giving in. His time was counted if he didn't do something here and now. Tarasque was sneaking in the kitchen again. He threw the poor dragon under the bus and got the reaction he desired. Martha's eyes were now wide open. Her grip on his lessened, but her fists were now clenched tight, and her tone of voice sing-song and sinister. Tarasque. If there was something that Yemiy and Martha were known for, it was for how sacred they considered the kitchen to be. Izuku faintly heard the groans of the dragon from across the residence, as if the beast had already sensed the green net's betrayal and was cursing him from his cubicle near the garage. Izuku let go of all his enchantments before grabbing hold of his servant's wrist. He knew that he couldn't let poor Tarasque suffer, because he didn't want to break his ribs to wake up Martha. Are you awake now? He asked before coughing a little. His lungs didn't come out and scathed of a strength hug. Yes, she responded with a smile that couldn't quite mask the aura of righteous fury that she emitted. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a dragon to discipline. He sighed before bonking her on the head with a chop of his hand. No, you don't have to do that to Tarasque. I just needed you to wake up and was getting desperate. Martha blushed before asking, I'm not that hard to wake up, am I? Izuku looked at her blankly, the unspoken respond making Martha flinch. Please change before joining us for breakfast, Martha-chan. Yes, Izuku. He went out of the room, closing the door on his way out, and took a long, deep breath. Now came the difficult part. His mom and the servant he summoned at the age of 10 were quite the night owl, In their room was a lair not unlike what you could imagine some fictional character whose name was forbidden in this house to be found in. Yes, their room. That was one thing he didn't imagine when he discovered his quirk years ago, to have a servant form a relationship with his mother. Considering the amount of time his father was missing from their life and the things this particular servant had done to protect and care for those of his home, he wasn't against his mom founding some love and affection with him, but it was quite disturbing when the man insisted to keep their relationship as servant and master or as teacher and pupil. He reached the room, and when he was about to open it, his servant stepped out from the doorframe, dressed in a black suit with white strips, a white shirt, and black tie. In one of his gloved hands rested a long black coat and a blue scarf, while in the other, he had his favorite silver cane and a suitcase. A pale face with long, silk-like white hair, with tips glowing a light shade of green under the sun. The sharp green eyes of a man in his mid-40s, showing the cold and royal presence of the one known as the Lancer-class servant Vlad III, the one that inspired the legend of "Hello," young Prince Vlad said, acknowledging the presence of his master and pupil, the son of his lover. "Good morning, Sensei," said Izuku, giving a polite greeting as he had been taught by the man in front of him. Vlad III is a Lancer-class servant. Izuku summoned him 4 years ago because a question about his origin of sword was perturbing him. Can you raise a sword against someone and still be a hero? The response the throne of hero offered was this person, the king that defended his country against the Turks, leaving mountains of impaled corpses as proof of his resistance. A defiled legend that was associated with a bloodthirsty creature that he despised. Vlad took a liking to the intelligent and polite boy that desired to protect people. Upon learning that he was in some way the king of the Ring of Deterrence, he decided to take him as if he was a pretender to the throne of Wallachia and teach him the ways of a king. Izuku learned a lot from the Lord of Impaler, but his mother was the one that picked the most onto the teaching of the servant. His mom had quitted the courtroom along with her job to take care of him as a housewife, but his father would never come home to see them, even when the man was in Japan. Inko, with a confidence boosted by the positive support of an actual king, her son and the other servants decided to confront her husband Hisashi. She discovered that he was cheating on her even before their marriage and had given up on Izuku and Inko the moment he realized that the boy was showing signs of quirklessness and decided to interact with them the minimum he could, planning to disappear from their life before Izuku turned 16. The mother was already famous at her job for being a relentless lawyer with a good sense of good and evil, the conviction to do everything she could to help the one she defended but that attacked. With the fury of a crusade which caused her to fall into some traps and loses some of her cases. When she came to court with her case against her husband, who had prepared for Inko Midoriya with a lot of emotional trap the caring mother would obviously fall into, people weren't expecting the usually simple woman to enter the courtroom with a royal fashion garb and the cold destruction of all her now ex-husband had prepared to use against her. Inko Midoriya gained an immense amount of wealth this day and gained a surname in court because of how she seemed to be able to drain him of all his fortune, fame, and reputation, the royal vampire. The irony of what the rumor mill came up with was never lost on the Midoriya family, but rumors about Inko always seemed to grow out of proportion. Her relationship with Vlad progressed from there, and she broke the news to Izuku last Christmas, and while their relationship was perfect, she could see that the two most important men in her life were getting comfortable with the new dynamics of the Midoriya household. Surprise. You two usually are much harder to wake up in the morning. We have an important meeting today, so we must depart as soon as possible. Your mother and I shall go as soon as we finish breakfast. I see. Then let us join the others. In the kitchen, EMIY was putting the final touch to the feast that was the breakfast at the Midoriya residence every morning. Servants were in essence magical and didn't need to eat per se, but Izuku and Inko always insisted on having everyone to eat together. If there wasn't a good reason for the absence of one person, Then no one would touch a single piece of food until said person was dragged to the table. To feed 7 persons instead of 2 can seem illogical, but the Midoriya were such a caring family, and it wouldn't pose too much problems to admit their intentions was nice, but when the numbers grew up to 5 additional mouths who ate, as if there was a pit in place of a stomach, then he had to admit that Midoriyas thought with their heart first instead of their wallet. He rejoiced a little, remembering that his saber, Arturia Pendragon, was worse than them, eating like a black hole at a pace his cooking skills had trouble keeping up with when he was a teenager. When he heard the last person sit down at the table, he took the large plates of food and placed them on the table, looking at the quite hilarious bunch of people reunited around his cooking. Medea of Colchis, the caster of his very own Holy Grail war. He had mixed feeling about Izuku summoning an anti-hero to teach him, but the witch really put the kid up to snuff when it came to magecraft in matter of months, when it would have taken years for him to guide his master in the right direction on spells he couldn't perform. Dressed in a black top with a long tan skirt, the princess of Colchis was elegantly eating bowls of rice at a breakneck speed. Yemaiwai had to admit that the witch was the doting big sister type and seemed to really care for her master, but she was the witch of betrayal, and Archer always had an eye on her. Then came Napoleon, another archer who didn't seem to use a bow. The guy was the joyful fellow type and was eating his eggs and bacon by the dozen without making a single stain on his white t-shirt, nor his blue short-sleeve shirt. However, the actual bowman of the two could see the pack of cigar in the interior pocket of the shirt and knew that if Inko were to see the thing, hell would break loose yet again. Not wanting to see demons, he settled his gaze upon the actual saint of the group. Saint Martha. The girl was dressed in a long red accordion skirt with a white sleeveless blouse. He knew that he shouldn't antagonize a girl that had a higher parameter of strength, one that could beat an actual dragon in combat, but he was about to back down when she tried to take over his kitchen with the pretext of being the patron saint of cooks. Their duel in the kitchen were legends by themselves. Ties were a common occurrence, and that was before their master joined the competition. It was also sweet to see the usually perfect holy saint act as an excited teenage girl when she eased up to others. That made him remember that he would have to restock on food for the goddamn dragon that they sheltered in the house. Sitting next to Martha was Inko. He had seen the transformation of the mother that felt guilty about not supporting her son on his dream to become a hero into a strong-willed woman that managed to tame the heroic spirit that became known as Dracula and to form a functional relationship with him. Dressed in a short-sleeve, green-colored jacket that bordered on gray with a skirt that didn't reach her knees, she seems to be the perfect image of a Japanese office lady. Next to him was her lover. Vlad was somewhat okay for Yemaiwai. He had actually drawn a lot of parallels between their stories, considering that Vlad killed to defend his own country in the selfish way of a king who had his legend tainted by those he fought, while Yemaiwai was an idealist fool who killed, betrayed by selfless ideals of an ally of justice who had only himself to blame for what he became. Finally came his master, Izuku Midoriya. Yemaiwai was truly awed by the learning speed and the dedication the young boy had showed over the years as a magus, as a master, and as an aspiring hero. Hero that was a sore spot for him. Being summoned in a world where the word hero was thrown around, but where being an ally of justice like his father asked him to be was near impossible. Heroes of this world were a mix of an idle job, a police job, and a firefighter job. Yemaiwai was not disgusted by the people that were pro-heroes, but he was honestly disappointed that the one in the top 10 saw it as a career and not as a vocation, an ideal to strive for. Then again, the idol of Izuku. All might seem like an okay guy, but he was too far away from Japan and made too short an appearance each day that he could make a proper opinion about the one they called the symbol of peace. A guy that was too similar to Berserker for his own liking, but he could appreciate how much effort the number one hero had put into making the world a better place. What truly surprised him was how he didn't seem to focus on wealth or beating villains up, but rather he was having most of his goods profits given to different charities, and Izuku was always able to recount every rescues the symbol of peace had made from the start of his career to the most recent one. Yes, hero truly was not a path he wished anyone to step into without thinking it properly, but Neeson said the 14 years old sitting in front of him. What is it? You seemed a little off. Is there something wrong? Izuku asked, tilting his head to the side. Yemaiwa smiled warmly to his master. It's nothing, master. I'm just reminiscing some old memories. Maybe one day, he could pass this broken ideal of his to someone without worrying about them becoming the slave of the collective unconsciousness of mankind or dying with a smile on their face while betrayed by those he saved. He had decided to give his master a chance to become a hero, but he would never allow him to become another Shiro Amiya. Mizudafu City, Japan. In a somber part of the city, a slime villain was planning to rob the people in the street while another villain would run rampant in the early morning. In a quite discreet apartment, a skeleton of a man just realized that his fridge was empty and decided to go for a trip to the department store in the afternoon. In the household of a certain blonde, a teenager dreamt of how he was recognized as the #1 hero before the shadow of a green-haired boy with a patronizing gaze would settle on him, as if he was a child playing pretend. All those people will play their role, and fate will take its course upon this world. All while the wizard marshal will observe the events with a watchful eye and a bucket of popcorn. Sayumi Shoku is an average girl. She is entering her 3rd year in this low-reputation middle school, hoping to graduate in the top 20 of her year to enter a high school with a better reputation, then to find what she wanted to do with her life before she entered college, hopefully get a boyfriend and go from there. Sayumi isn't really aspiring for a hero career. She has a decent quirk that she called Candle Hands, who allows her to turn her hands and arms into flames and expend them for some meters, but she didn't like to be hurt, and hero is definitely a dangerous profession. If Sayumi had one thing for her in her middle school career, it is her status as president of the student council. She had put her all into the last elections and was elected with a fair margin in her favor. She really enjoyed the feeling that responsibilities brought her, but she could go without having to go to school so early in the morning to deal with various affairs. Hello, she said, opening the door to the student council room, even though she expected it to be empty. Hello, Kaicho-san, was the unexpected reply from across the room. She blinked and looked out to see that there was, in fact, a student already present despite the fact class's Wunti started in at least an hour or so. She almost sighed when she realized who was standing in the corner of the room working on some piece of school furniture. Izuku Midoriya, one of her classmates. She didn't talk to him a lot in the 3 years that they shared in the same class, but it didn't mean that she didn't know about him. Standing a little under 170 meters, he is one of the most well-known guys in the school. Even though he is as plain as possible, not particularly ugly nor handsome, with a green mop of hair that resembles a bush, a face with freckles that seems to form a diamond on each cheek. He didn't look the part, but he was a popular subject at school for 3 reasons. 1. Izuku Midoriya is quirkless. It's strange how normality could be such a hot topic, but there wasn't anyone in school that didn't know that with how it was shouted from the rooftops whenever you talked about him. Quirkless people were nearly inexistent in Mizudafu, except a few elderlies, and a teenager with such a peculiarity was bounded to attract some attention onto him. 2. Izuku Midoriya wants to become a hero. That was the splitting point of both the student body and the teachers alike. At first, a lot of people believed that it was a joke, what with the first fact about Midoriya being common knowledge. But over the years, Izuku Midoriya proved himself to be one, if not the best student of their school. A perfect score in every exam since his first year. Heck, he even bested the one girl in another class that had a memory boost quirk, a kind disposition with which he helped the clubs with broken appliances or cleaning duties, a good physical build considering that he stopped the previous school bully from harassing a member of the archery club. With all of this, Izuku gained a silent support from a lot of people in the school. Silence that was overwhelmed by how much the others and especially the blonde bomb of her class keeps trying to belittle him or to say he is worthless. Her opinion, well, if Midoriya Kuin failed to become a hero, he could always become a repairman, seeing how he always seems to know what is wrong in whatever broken appliances that she often brings to him. He had earned his moniker as fake janitor during his second year, and he had laughed when she explained to him one day that the title was about him, when he was repairing the coffee machine in the teacher's room, and she had to watch over him. 3. It is a closely kept secret between the one that appreciate Midoriya, but he is the best at cooking. One day, the cafeteria's cooks injured himself, and Midoriya had taken over the kitchen when no one was looking. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. The only ones that could confirm that it was Midoriya's cooking was herself, the cook, and the school nurse. Everyone else believed that the school had hired an especially good replacement for the day, never questioning who it was, but always regretting their departure. Midoriya gained a lot of attention from the female students when he took some home economics classes, and Sayumi was pretty sure the only reason no one was asking him out was because it was akin to throwing yourself into Bakugo's explosive tantrum. "Hello, Midoriya Koen," she greeted with a calm demeanor. "You're here earlier than usual." He looked over his shoulder to smile at her. "My mom had a meeting this morning and Aldera was on her way, so she dropped me off." She hummed to confirm that she heard and accepted his explanation. "And why are you working on those so early?" she asked while pointing at the pile of mechanical parts by his side. Well, he started, scratching the back of his head in a sheepish manner, a smile on his face. "I do like to get home earlier than usual, and since I don't have my bike with me, I will have to walk home, so if I can finish this now, it's less I have to do later in the day." She looks away, in what Izuku assumed to be boredom. "I see. Are you ready for the start of this year?" "Yes, Kaicho-san. I just hope I'm not sitting next to Kakin this year. The last few times were already bad enough, but he seems more and more furious against me as time goes by. Probably because the UA entrance exam is getting closer and closer. I heard gossips in the teacher's room about how he got the best score in the mock exam." "Ah, yeah. A pity I couldn't be there to take it, but it's best if he gets some motivation to get into UA before the start of the year." He dusted him before putting back on his black blazer. "I'll see you in class, Kaicho-san," he said to her with a smile. "Why, yeah. See you soon, Midoriya Koen," Sayumi replied. Sayumi waited until the green net was out of earshot before putting her head on the table, dangling her legs under it, and emitting sounds that she herself isn't sure what they were supposed to be while her face took a shade of red, not unlike the flames of her quirk. Yeah, Izuku Midoriya is more like his brother than he is even aware of. Shunkoju is a failure in life. Or at least, that's what he considers himself to be. Age 46, a balding blonde head, single and without child, a teaching job at one of the worst middle school in Mizutofu. The only thing he liked in his life was to think that one of his students would always do better than he did with their quirks than he could have with the ability grammar. His quirk points out the grammar problems in any document he looks at. It was the only reason he had gotten this job as a teacher in the first place. So, when he greeted his third-year students this morning and had to distribute their orientation forms, he wanted to share the joy and hope he had for them to succeed. "I know that you just entered third year and that it can seem a little early, but I want you to think about your future," he said with his best deep voice. "Here are the orientation forms that I want you to fill in before the end of the week." Now came the best moment of every year for him, as he saw 28 students display their quirks in the classroom. He really liked the sight of quirks not being restricted. Maybe it was why he joined the Heart and Mind Party and voted for Koku Hanabata last year. "Who am I kidding? All of you want to join the hero course, right?" he exclaimed, not noticing how two of his students didn't join on the fun of the others. One calmly writing in a notebook, the other with his feet on his desk, his hair covering his face as if waiting for his moment. He had to calm him down a bit, if only so he didn't get a pay cut for letting his student break the law in his class. "Yes, I know you all have wonderful quirks, but you shall know that their usage is prohibited here." A voice called out to him, "Sensei, don't put me in the same bag as those losers." I'm aiming way higher than any of those clowns. Hikuden-T helped a small grin at the sight of Katsuki Bakugo, his favorite pupil. Red eyes that shone with intelligence and pride, blonde hair that were way too cool to be his natural hair disposition. And most importantly, an incredibly cool quirk that would make him a hero for sure. Ah, how much he loved to brag about how he taught one of the future best hero in the world. He just realized that his other students were getting irate about the jab they received and decided to help Katsuki put them in their place. Ah yes, Bakugo-kun is aiming for UA, if I'm correct. He loved to see how his students were gushing about how prestigious and hard to get into this particular school is. He didn't even realize Bakugo had climbed onto his desk because of what he read next. UA Hero Course Application Izuku Midoriya. Shun almost scowled at the stain he had to put up with in his class, focusing his gaze upon his document to not betray anything about his inner thought. Izuku Midoriya was always a heated object of discussion in staff meeting. He despised the idea that a quirkless person could achieve anything in this world. After all, it was when quirkless were in charge of the government that regulation of quirk usage were made into laws. No matter if the boy was intelligent, talented, or that he apparently saved a total of 1 million yen in repair service during the 2 years that he has been a student in Aldera. For Shun Koju, quirkless were relics of the past, and Izuku Midoriya should disappear in the hole he must have been born in. Oh, he had tried to put pressure onto the boy, to get him in trouble for getting a perfect score in an exam that he designed to be pretty hard by accusing him of cheating or by siding with a student that could have gotten in a decent hero course with his muscle augmentation quirk, but that Midoriya had beaten when said student allegedly harassed a girl, but apparently his mother was some hotshot lawyer that the director didn't want to deal with. The nerve of this quirkless loser to try to get on the same level as Bakugo. That gave him an idea, and with a tone of voice that made it more of a remark than an exclamation. Oh, looks like Midoriya wants to go to UA too. When the silence settled, he expected all the students to mock the quirkless boy for even trying, but instead, half of his students had an uneasy smile, as if someone just farted. "What are you doing? Go for it," laugh. "You all know that I'll turn a blind eye to it." He shouted in his mind as if he suddenly had a telepathy quirk. Said kid, just look at him with calm eyes, as if he was surprised by the mention of his name. "Yes, I'm aiming for the hero course." One of his students with a rock mutation quirk threw the first jab with a shaky voice. "Me Midoriya, don't make me laugh. You can't enter. You're just for being a smartass." The student council president, Sayumi Shoku, seemed about to respond to that when suddenly, "DQUU" was yelled from somewhere in the class, followed by an explosion on the quirkless student's desk. "You don't even have a shitty quirk, you have nothing, and you think you can compete with me, you fucking nerd." Midoriya just sighed when he saw that his desk's only damage was a scorch mark the size of Katsuki's palm. "I'm not competing with you, Kaken. UA Hero Course has 36 places, not just one. Shut up, you think you can even breathe the same air as me, you fucking reject." Katsuki replied, his palms emitting small sparkles and producing crackles were getting louder and quicker. He had to intervene, if only for his salary's sake. Now Bakugo, settle down. You can always make your point to Midoriya about the danger of the hero course for someone who lacks the means to defend himself after classes are over," he said with an encouraging tone. "Katsuki Bakugo is a prodigy. That was what everyone said about him since he got his quirk. No, even before that people were praising him, as if he was born for greatness. He is the hottest guy around, the coolest, the one with the best quirk of the whole school. His parents are pretty rich. The only reason that they wanted him to go to this shitty school was because it was where they met. It is as if the scenario was already written, the actors were in place. All there was to do was play the film, and you would see the story about how he became the #1 hero, the richest guy in the world. But there is one stain on this perfect picture: Izuku, Deku, Midoriya. A shitty side character that he met because their mothers were best friend or something. He would never admit it, but they were friend. That is until the little shit was revealed to be quirkless and he decided to part with the thing. Katsuki Bakugo wasn't T1 that liked to entertain dreams and delusion. You were destined for greatness, or you were a pebble for the king to step upon, and Deku was that, a pebble in his origin story. But one day, Deku changed. He isn't sure what brought the change. He had other things to do than to look at what was happening in the life of Quirkless Reject after all. But from there, Deku seemed a little more off, as if he didn't care what Bakugo was doing. Then Deku started to get ahead of him in classes. He tried to blow an explosion up in his face for even trying to upstage him, but he didn't even give him the time of his day, always quitting early for training or whatever. Katsuki didn't like that, but he didn't bother much. He thought that it was best to prepare a discourse for when he will become the #1 hero that'll put back Deku in his role of Pebble. The world wouldn't tolerate that Katsuki Bakugo's role was hindered by some quirkless nobody and would correct the problem by itself. Now, he was regretting not acting earlier. So when classes were over, he grabbed the notebook, the worthless waste of time and space, kept scribbling into all day long. "We need to talk, Deku." The greenette looked annoyed, angry. He isn't sure, but that was already something he would have to rectify. "What do you want, Kakin?" Hoi Katsuki, what s that said one of his extras, referring to the book he had in his hand. He showed them the cover, not even reading it himself. Hero Analysis number 13, what kind of joke is that, the other one said, laughing his ass off. "We aren't finished, Deku. Don't go to UA. That's my destiny as the only one in this school to enter the hero course. I'm the only one that can become a pro hero." Deku looked at him with a look that was patronizing, pitying, as if he isn't angry enough. Now the little shit had to look at him as if he is better than him. Since he already had something that belonged to the nerd in his hand, he settled to explode it in his palms before throwing it by the open window. Heroes always have their stories before they even enter high school. Me, I'm going to be the only one to make the exploit of graduating as the #1 student of this shitty school and making it to the hero course of UA. He put his hand on his shoulder, letting his quirk do the talking by igniting his palm and smiling menacingly at the one that was always following him like a good dog when he was younger. Then it happened. Deku's eyes gained a strange glint. His body tensed as if he was filling the scrawny body that he always had with something that smelled like metal, and Izuku batted the hand he had put on his shoulder away. "Is that all then? Let me tell you something, Kakin." Katsuki was so surprised by the sudden change that he didn't even realize that Izuku was already by the door. "You will definitely go pro with your quirk, but you will never become a hero if you continue like this. Me, I'm not even sure that I will be able to achieve my dreams, but I'm not letting anything pull me down. Not before and not now." And with that, Deku was gone before he could even say anything. Izuku Midoriya is frustrated. He really didn't like to interact with Kakin those days. When they were younger, Izuku always admired how Kakin seemed invincible, as if he could beat every obstacle that stood in his way, be it people of his age group or older. He still remembered how the blonde had beaten a middle schooler with his quirk when he was 4 years old. But then he had experienced the dream cycle. He had spared against all of his servants. He had already faced a threat that. He abruptly shot down that train of thought, not really wanting to remember this particular passage of his life. He finally reached the pound where laid his notebook. The first detail that showed that the book wasn't normal was that, despite suffering an explosion at point blank, the book was intact, and even in the small pound, it didn't seem to be damaged by the green water that the pound had. Even stranger, the fishes in the pound seemed frightened by the book, as if they could sense something unnatural on it. Izuku took back his notebook, and sensing no one around, he removed the small enchantment to reveal the book's real title. After all, his Hero Analysis number 13 was in his room along with the other 29 volumes. The notebook's cover didn't change much except for the small magic circle that allowed it to turn back into its masked appearance if Izuku didn't allowed the person that took it to take a look. The title read My Self-Analysis on Quirk, Skills in Magecraft, number 26. Izuku had started to document his researches on Notebook since he was 4 and had a steady rhythm of filling at least 2 notebooks per year since Medea started to train him. Thought he only managed to bring those part of his life at school since she offered him a collection of enchanted notebooks that would guarantee that he would never be discovered as long as he didn't want attention to be brought upon him. He sighs, at least, nothing could be damaged once I wrote something, and other liquids aren't absorbed by it. Nachon truly is the best when it comes to gifts. He finished that sentence with a soft smile. Izuku Midoriya had accepted the path of a magus when Emiya proposed to train him, but he felt as if he had entered the highway when Midoriya entered in his life. He understood most of the concept that the magus from another era taught him and could fill the gap in his knowledge, either through the dream cycle or some educated guess that his Nachon would confirm or admonish him for even thinking about. He still remembered the horrified face she had made when he told her about an experiment that involved nerve circuits and had blow up Emiya's room for even letting those kinds of ideas pop up in his head. Izuku applied the enchantment that would allow him to read his work while being sure that no one could even take a glimpse of what was written, and made his way toward home. From this morning training, I can safely say that I've reached the level of strength and endurance of a normal adult that I can represent with the parameter stat of E. My agility is higher than that, and according to the different analysis and comparison with the strength of servants and pro heroes alike, I can surely be ranked at D, which is expected of any sidekick in any decent hero agency I've seen so far. My luck and noble phantasm stats are E, but only because they're ISNT a pro hero I can rank by those stats, and only my servants are good measuring points. Speaking of which, I've been feeling rather warm those days, and according to my structural analysis, it could mean that I will gain access to my missing magic circuits really soon. No cause for this weight has been identified, but it seems that my circuits aren't damaged by being inactive for so long. Theory 1 is that they accomplished a specific task that I couldn't do consciously until I was mature enough. Theory 2 is that they fed on ambient prana or mana until they reached a certain level. Last theory would be that it is the fault of Zelrich. So far, all I've managed to acquire magic circuit compatible with the elements of metal and lightning, and that was before I modified A. Part of them to grant me the element possibility instead of always relying on the skill I acquired from G-San. I should probably identify the element related to those magic circuits before any unsupervised experiment. As he finished to read this particular passage, Izuku felt a sudden chill run down his spine. He put his notebook into his backpack and focused his reinforcement in his eyes, nose, and ears to locate the source of this feeling. Vlad and Emiya were the first to have inspired this sense of danger. Not a form of instinct, but rather the experience that all forms of danger seems to brought when they approached. This time danger had a slimy body if the noise that was coming from the passage he used as a shortcut to his home. Next came the scent, and boy did he wish he hadn't reinforced his nose now, because it had literally took a dip in a pile of shit if he had to trust his nose. Finally, he saw a green liquid come out of the manhole, and from the sewers emerged a sludge-mutated man with yellow irises on googly red eyes. His yellow teeth made for quite the terrifying sight. Not really terrifying when you actually lived under the same roof as a witch and Dracula. A man-sized disguise. How fortunate, don't worry kid, it will only last 40 seconds. Izuku assessed the threat with structural analysis through his eyes, a variant of his Ni-san's first spell. A liquid body makes blunt force, as well as slashes and thrust attacks, ineffective. The shadowy environment prevent the use of black keys since he doesn't have a shadow. All in all, the best option is Kirenosilino. From his open palm, a stream of violet electricity surged and reached for the slime villain that suffered a lot of pain from the spell. 8 years ago, Midoriya had unveiled the available element of Izuku as being lightning, and the first offensive option that she offered him in his study of the magic that she used was this spell taught to her by the goddess of the moon, Hecate. It was a spell designed to reach for the concept of lightning, with the intent to give it a direction as if the target of the spell was a lightning rod. Izuku was being cautious and didn't put much power in the spell, so the villain who was down at his feet surged again and managed to engulf him in his body. This is bad, K-Epsilon Ralphi no Omicron is useless if I'm taking the attack as well, and reinforcement 1T get me out of this. I think I'll need a TR. Before he could even think about another way out, Izuku heard the manhole cover hit the ground, and, coming from the same sewers the villain crawled out from, he saw a muscular man with a white shirt and green cargo pants. The man was huge, at least 2 meters tall, but what drew Izuku's attention the most was the two antennae forming a V on top of the man's head. No way, he thought. Fear not, young man. A booming voice resonated in the tunnel. Why? Because I'm here. And before Izuku could process what he was seeing, the man was right in front of the smile villain, fist at the ready, and exclaimed, Texas Smash. All Might is all except proud of himself in this instant. When he had started his pursuit of the slime villain, he was pretty sure that he could have caught him in a matter of minutes. But it had taken him 2.5 just to realize that the villain was already attacking a middle schooler. When he managed to blow the guy up with the air pressure of his Texas Smash, he expected the teen to be in a less than better shape considering the amount of force he took, but he was mostly glad that he didn't seemed harmed in the slightest. Well, except for the smell, but he was in the sewers for the last 30 minutes, so he couldn't judge. Sorry to have you mixed up in my mistakes, young man. Generally, I'm not one to have such problems, but this slippery guy managed to get into the sewer system, and I'm new in this city. And not a problem, All Might, sir. See, can you sign this for me, please? The teen exclaimed. A fanboy, Tashinori thought, but of course that's the least I can do, but first I need to take care of this villain. And with speed that only One for All could provide, he scooped up the villain in the bottles he kept in his grocery bag. The boy seemed a little nervous before asking him, All Might, can I ask you a question? You just did, but I'm not against giving you a freebie, seeing as you helped me catch this villain, young. Midoriya. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Well, what is your question, young Midoriya? All Might expected any kind of question from this obvious fan of him. What is your favorite dish? Who is the most dangerous villain you've faced? Are you in a relationship with Midnight? He had heard a lot of questions during his time as the symbol of peace, but he never expected such a profound question from a boy who was even 15. What do you have to sacrifice not to be a hero, but to save at least one person? A standoff. Tashinori Yagi, aka All Might, the symbol of peace, was thrown for a loop by this teenager, Izuku Midoriya. Everything seemed to have pause around them, and All Might took a real look at the teen. His posture, the one of someone that didn't seem to focus exclusively on strength, but rather on the refinement of the technique, control, and the agility he could get from one's body without hindering the growth. His tone of voice when he asked this unusual question. The boy had seemed mature, as if that question holds some deep meaning. Scratch that. He wasn't even sure he had seen politicians put as much force in their voice before, and was it begging he had distinguished in this young man's voice. Finally came the eyes. All Might have been working as a hero since he was 18. No, even before, since he accompanied Nana and Gran Torino, before he had started high school. So he had seen a lot of gazes directed at him, either when people wanted a hero to save them or a symbol to shine in the dark times. But here and now, All Might was confronted with the eyes of a teenager that looked at him with the eyes of someone that was about to drown. What do you have to sacrifice not to be a hero, but to save at least one person? Tashinori could understand this question. To be a hero didn't always mean to be able to save everyone, but this boy wasn't looking at it this way. He seemed to understand that you couldn't save everyone and wanted someone to tell him what he could offer to be able to save one more person. It was both admirable and terrifying. He wasn't sure that he wanted the boy to follow such a self-destructive path, but he could admire the resolve of this young man. I think I understand your question, young Midoriya. You want to know what you could do to save one more person because you could not bear the fact that your inaction or lack of strength would cause more people to suffer. At Izuku's silence, the pro-hero continued. Then, if you considers a career in heroic young man, please think over it. Even I have trouble keeping the world safe and can't always save everyone. If you don't think you can't bear the possibility of failing to save someone, then consider joining a support course and assuring that the heroes are always equipped to deal with rescues. All Might realized that what he said may have been a little rough or out of place, but another coughing fit was taking over him, and he had to get away fast. You are young. You should think exactly of what you want to do if you're not sure about being a hero. All Might turned around, not noticing how the bottles of slime villain were loose in his pants, nor the grip on his white shirt by the hand of a teenager. And then they were gone. Another location of the city. In an alleyway, Katsuki Bakugo was making his way to an arcade. His two lackeys convincing him that he needed to relax a little and that he could deal with Deku the next time he saw him. Deku the mere thought of the quirkless pest made Katsuki's palm ignite, startling the two companions that he didn't even remember the name of. That fucker, he said, exploding an empty can in the narrow alleyway. What the fuck is his problem? Can't he see that the shit stain is getting in the way? He started cursing to the heaven, as if it was second nature to him. Now, Katsuki, you've known the guy your whole life, right? His most recent lackey asked. Besides, what can the fake janitor do? I don't think he will want him to clean their hallway. Katsuki was half tempted to put his hand over the guy's mouth and ask him he wanted to taste death for speaking to him in such a way, but refrained himself. Yeah, Katsuki chuckled, you're right. Quirkless Deku can't do a shit. The world wouldn't let the tale of its future king be damaged by this nuisance for much longer. A small laugh escaped the other boys' lips, and they replied, as if they were a choral with practiced ease, damn, right, all hail, King Bakugo, and they repeated their little praise until some noises came from behind Katsuki, who was too focused into the praises to notice it. The noise was that of a bottle falling from the sky and the splattering of his contents onto the ground. When the boys were about to comment about it, the liquid raised into the air. The mysterious entity focusing on the scene of a blonde middle schooler who seemed to ignore his presence, focusing instead on making small explosion appear from his palms. Jackpot was the only warning Katsuki Bakugo got before being swallowed in what seemed like a river of gluey liquid. On top of a random building, Mizudafu City. Izuku had done his fair share of reckless decisions when he was younger, climbing up on trees, exploring dark forests and abandoned buildings, starting his researches on magecraft or summon a servant without proper preparations and protections. But honestly, he didn't expect clinging onto a jumping All Might to enter his personal top 10 of the things he regretted doing the next second he had done them. But here he was, in the sky, high enough for his fall to be lethal if he didn't control where he would land with the number one hero trying to detangle his grip. Good luck with that. He perfected his reinforced grip by clinging to the mane of a dragon running at half of its maximum speed. When All Might and Izuku landed onto the open roof of a nearby building, he expected that the pro would start berating him for his foolishness, but instead All Might started to smoke and to cough violently, and was that blood he was sensing. "Hey, All Might," he said, putting his hand on where he thought the hero's back was, readying his magic circuit for a structural analysis. "Trace, on," was muttered so low that no one heard it, but what the aria brought into Izuku's mind, I was making him go pale. Musculature damaged at 73 of what was expected. His left lung was crushed flat by a powerful blunt hit, and is messing his capacity to breath by leaking a small amount of blood in his respiratory system. His stomach was removed entirely by gastrectomy, and his natural reserves of nourishment and fat cells are thinner than a piece of paper. The smoke dissipated, and even when he knew what he should have expected, the image of a skeleton with blue eyes and angular features to look at him with a bit of panic and shame was still terrifying for what it implied. All Might, he didn't know what to say. This was All Might. This was the one that was carrying the world as the number one hero, as the idol of his younger days. I think I have some explanations to do. Young Midoriya, even if their voices was the same, the tone taken was alien to Izuku, a calm mask behind a lot of fear. Why, yes, I have an idea of what is the extent of the injuries you have, but... Toshinori Yagi put his hand on the boy's shoulder and started his tale about how a villain had caused so much damage onto his body 6 years ago, about why didn't he want the public to know the outcome of the fight, nor of his medical status. You know, All Might, I always imagined what it was to be a hero in this age. I've seen a lot of things when it comes to my family about heroism, but I'm not sure what I could expect from this world from my path when it comes to being a hero. So, that is why I wanted to ask someone who is still into heroics, into the field where people are in danger and needs help. Tashinori replayed the Boy S question in his head and started to form a picture of the Boy S story. He seemed to understand the risk of what being a hero was, but couldn't he ask his family about those kinds of things? So he imagined that the boy was part of a family that was involved in heroics, but wasn't he alive anymore? I see was all Tashinori could say to not step into the hurtful memories of the boy. If you don't have to run away like earlier the boy said, and Tashinori could feel the words stab him in the guts, could you answer me honestly and tell me, what is it like being a hero? Because from my point of view, it's an admirable path, but I'm never sure if I will ever be strong enough to success where others failed. Tashinori meditated those words for a good while before responding. I think you didn't understand something, young Midoriya. To be a hero isn't a straight path with lots of complications on your way. It's not, the boy said, an honest expression of surprise on his face. No, to be a hero is more akin to a leap of faith. You don't know what or when you will be confronted with something stronger or greater than you. Most of the time, especially in my early career, I wasn't sure if I would prevail and save the day. That's why I smile for myself, to trick my fear in myself into believing that I can do it. After all, those who smile are always the strongest. And with that sentence, he looked into the boy's eyes with a true smile, the one kind that Nana used to give him. The moment was honestly one of the best Tashinori had in the recent years, but before he could appreciate it some more. Boom! A huge explosion came from a nearby street, not far away from them. What the All Might was at a loss for words. That explosion had come from where he came from, and even thought he had to deal with young Midoriya clinging onto his shirt. He didn't see a sign of explosives devices or villain activities in the sector. That's when he remembered that he was carrying a villain in his pocket, and that those pockets had been really light for some reason. Wait, where was young Midoriya? Mount Lady didn't think she would come to regret this day. It was supposed to be the starting point of her career as a hero in Mizudafu, an urban city that had a decent rate of hero where she could make a place for herself in the coming month. Honestly, the day started pretty well. With her gigantification quirk, she had stopped a villain that rampaged in the morning and got her share of glory for the day. Yes, she now had a frustrated Kamui Woods to deal with. But in her defense, it was how the hero business functioned. The early bird catches the worm. But at the end of her patrol of the afternoon, she gets a call about another dangerous villain in the area, setting things on fire and creating mass chaos. When she arrived onto the scene, her beautiful features that she trained hard in high school nearly set into a scowl. The street is engulfed in flame. Fire has sprayed into the street, and if nothing is done, quickly it will go on to the next one. She examined her teammates to see if any of them is of use with their quirk. Kamui Woods is at a huge disadvantage against the scorching buildings and can't approach the villain. Death Arms is a muscle head, but he knows that you can't punch fire in a next week if you aren't named All Might. Backdraft is super effective with his water-based quirk, but he is dealing with the civilians right now. Oh, it seems that some of Death Arm's sidekicks are here, but she can't get a good idea of their utility. She uses her quirk to grow 19 meters more and get a visual on their target. It looks like a massive green slime, but for what she sees, it can't be the origin of the fire. So what else? Boom! Was that a hand mount lady focused some more? And she wasn't mistaken. Kamui Wood's Death Arms target has a hostage, middle schooler, judging by the size. He is the source of the explosions. The kid must be trying to get away from the thing and lost control of his quirk. She could see the curses at the end of Death Arm's lips. The situation is more complicated than they had thought, and they will need a hand really fast if they wanted to get the kid out of here alive. The heroine tried to remember all the scenarios she came across during her training years, but she couldn't find anything, or at least something that wouldn't kill either the boy, the villain, or both with her crushing the slime onto the pavement. In the street behind her, Mount Lady didn't seem to notice the presence of a green-haired boy looking at the scene with wide eyes. Boom! Izuku's mind had already understood what was happening the moment he heard the explosion. Running toward Ground Zero, he praised that he was mistaken and that the sludge villain just opened a bottle of gas and not kidnapped the one person he thinks about. But when he arrived in the crowd of civilian and look up to see that Kakin is in the grasp of the same villain from earlier, he nearly groans. What is happening? He hears two civilians discussing about the situation. A kid is apparently being taken hostage by the villain, and his quirk is running rampant because he is being suffocated. Right, more like Kakin is trying his best to blast the thing away and doesn't he realize that there are civilian locations around. Death Arms is right before him and seems to hesitate to enter the frame, so Izuku decides to give him some option to attack. Death Arms the pro orientate his head towards him, but keep an eye on the situation. The hostage is a classmate of mine. The explosion can only come from his palms. That seems to give a necessary motivation to the pro, but another explosion bigger than before makes him step back. Kimui think we will have to wait for a suitable quirk. The kid will have to endure it some more. Were those guys serious? I can think of at least 4 scenarios to get him away with their capacities. Just then, Izuku saw the eyes of Katsuki, full of fear and desperation, and Izuku remembers the words of All Might. A leap of faith. Izuku focused on his magic circuits, all of them, and like the hammer of a gun being cocked, he leaps into the fray with 2 murmured words. Trace. On. Zelrich's current location, unknown. On a multiversal television, a joint project of Zelrich and an instance of Noritaka Amiya, father of Kiritsugu, that decided that it was better to make a TV to witness the accelerated end of the world and reach the root by fiddling with technology rather than experimenting on dead apostles. The scene of Izuku's incoming battle against the sludge villain was interrupted by an educational program on magecraft, presented by none other than Lord Elmeloy II, Waver Velvet, who was a magician of the first magic, denial of nothingness. Today, students, we will finish the lesson on elements with the 5th factor and its variants. The professor extended his hand, and a sphere of magical energy appeared out of nowhere in his palm. This is the current state of the element, ether, in this world, one of the 5 great elements that makes of a magus an average one capable of using fire, earth, water, wind, and this element here. Now, ether is not an element proper. You can't use it by itself. It needs to be combined to have at least some properties. If you don't, then it's just a mass of magical energy that allows you to force the actualization of a mystery. However, thanks to the research of Lady Animosphere from the Celestial Body Branch, we know that ether didn't exist in the Age of God, and we got a glimpse of what existed before, something we decided to call true ether, and was apparently the foundation of most of the divine entities during this particular era. With that, the first magician allowed another ball to form in his free hand, this time more colorful and alien in nature. Now, students of the Modern Magecraft Theories department, you all know that the difference between the Age of Gods and the modern era is the absence of divine entities caused by the King of Heroes, Gilgamesh, throwing them out of the world along with their energy with an unknown noble phantasm. Several students nodded, having heard of how their teacher fought against the King of Heroes during the 4th Holy Grail War through the rumors. No one could confirm if he really had won through an epic battle with his servant or if he just won all of Gilgamesh's treasury through a bet. All they knew was that their teacher was super badass, and his story should definitely be made into a fanfiction. Now, if we can affirm that ether is the result of the disappearance of the divine from this planet, and in the true ether, what will happen when the modern era will end? A student raised their hand. The ether factor would follow a new line of evolution. But what could be the end of modern era or of the ether, professor? Lord El Malloy too smiled smugly and answered, I'm talking about removing Gaia from the influence of ether. Thus we will have a glimpse of what the magical energy will be made of after the death of the planet. The student were in awe. That could be a groundbreaking discovery, only possible thanks to the talent of the magician and the changes he brought to the clock tower. I already made the first test in my workshop and officially present to you the element of the next era, grain, the space dust element. In the hand of the magician rested a ball similar to the previous one, but its color was far dimmer than the others and presented itself as a strange mix between a rainbow hue and a dark gray, as if it was the image of a white noise with colors popping every now and then. In this world, this element is unstable, and Gaia gets really pissed off when it notices it because it's the equivalent of what a necrosis would be for a biological entity. Look at what happens when I remove the multi-layered bounded field that I prepared for Gaia to chew on during this display. From their sits, the students observe how their teacher took some steps back and the layers of magical energy being removed little by little when suddenly a strident sound came from the ball and it distorted itself before vanishing, as if the world had wanted the thing to suffer and every trace of it to be removed. As you have seen, it is far more dangerous to experiment on this new element than it is worth, even for me. But for now, I want every one of you to emit at least one plausible theory of what it could lead to. The estimated professor took a cigar out of thin air and ignited it with the tip of his finger before looking at the spectator rather than his students. That's all. See you next time. Unknown dimension. In the image of the soul, created by the driving force of sword and salvation, there was a plant. A tiny root made out of the element of lightning. Over the years, the plant grew. Its roots deepened, and it took the form of a tree. This tree rooted in lightning developed, inspired by the life of the world made out of sword. It couldn't become a sword, the concept being too compounded for the tree to imitate, so it decided to grow layers of metal in place of wood. Today, the one represented by the tree called upon its entirety that included the new addition of the now matured tree. A fruit, small as it was, its nature was far more alien than the rest of the tree. The fruit having fed on the magical energy of the world. A world where the planet wasn't able to defend itself when a new element emerged. This fruit was made out of grain and shines with every color of the rainbow all at once. This is the start of a new era, and the soul of Izuku Midoriya will be the first to enter it. Sludge villain confrontation, Mizudafu City. Tashinori had finally arrived at the location of the explosion, the smoke and the giant newbie Mount Lady being good landmarks when navigating the streets in his gaunt form. The crowd was already big behind the line formed by the police, but he could already see that the situation wasn't good. Backdraft had his hand full of all the sources of fire scattered along the street's dwelling apartments. Kemui Woods was in a hostile environment with all the blaze around. Mount Lady was saying that she couldn't approach the street since it was too small for her to fit in. Death Arms and his sidekicks were all focused around blunt force, which was ineffective against the villain. The situation was truly damning because, unlike Death Arms said, they had the perfect quirk to deal with the man himself. All Might, the symbol of peace, was right behind them, but he couldn't do a thing, having spent the entirety of his time today. He truly felt pathetic, even more so when he felt the eyes of the blonde hostage linger toward the front of the crowd. He looked away, not wanting the visage of this boy to haunt him. It was then that he noticed the soft hue of rainbow at his feet, the light sound of electricity, the odor of metal that he always associated with his friend David Shield. And why was he tasting something acid in his mouth right now? "Oh, stop him," shouted one of the policemen, which prompted Tashinori to look up, and he gasped at the sight. It was young Midoriya, running fast towards the villain. He is as fast as Ingenium is he glowing rainbow, and my God, are those swords in his hands. Tashinori's train of thought was finally catching up with the situation, but it was too late to stop the kid who arrived before the sludge villain in a crouching position with his two swords extended, one white representing the Yin and one black representing the Yang. The hostage seemed very surprised to see young Midoriya, but even from here, Tashinori could see the recognition in the blonde-s eyes and deduce that they must be. "What are you doing here, you shitty nerd?" The insult was bizarrely punctuated by an explosion that the green-haired kid escaped with a sublime backflip somersault before rushing toward the villain with both blades glowing this strange hue of rainbow. The black one struck first between the hostage and his sludge aggressor with a shout of Kancho Kirisaku from young Midoriya. The effect of the slash was to completely separate the boy from his slime prison and for his body to fall face first on the ground. The villain seems to suffer little for what was supposed to have cut off his arms if he were made out of flesh, groaning and swearing to make the boy suffer. The pros were finally reaching the blonde when young Midoriya shouted Byakuya Minuchi. Tashinori had seen a lot of way to fights in his life, be it fists, quirks, guns, or even swords. He had seen all of them, but what young Midoriya just did was impossible. The white blade had glowed brightly, and instead of cutting the throat of the villain if he had any, it acted like a painting brush, the glowing rainbow being applied instead of the wound. And while the wound seems to have hurt the villain greatly, seeing as he had screamed to the heavens, it looked like this slash had ignored the fact that a normal human, quirk or not, would have died from just an attack, merely making the sludge man's eyes roll into their sockets before he fell backward, making a splashing sound. He just realized that this boy, who seemed to have an electrical quirk when he arrived to rescue him, had summoned swords, applied effects to them that were beyond normal science, and run with speed that was beyond strengthening quirks. Multiple quirks, this thought, made All Might's brain freeze, and he decided then and there that he couldn't let this kid go away when all he knew about him was his name. He needed to learn everything he could about the boy. Either he is connected to All for One, or I just found a next holder of One for All. Police Station, Multiverse City. Izuku was a little uneasy. Maybe it was because he was scolded by Death Arms for intervening in a hostage situation. No, it's not that. I don't really care that he threw that. It was not my affairs. The guy shooting have said that I didn't need to intervene and let the pros handle it when he himself asked for someone with a better suited quirk. Maybe it was because the police insisted that he was brought to the station, nearly handcuffed, if not for All Might's appearance. I really need to thank him. If not for him, they would have arrested me for illegal quirk usage and vigilantism. Oh, maybe he wasn't comfortable because someone had the bright idea to put him next to Bakugo in the interrogation room, and his childhood friend was glaring daggers at him with the fury of 1,000 suns. Dear God, I'm not going to enjoy this. Izuku's saving grace come in the form of a somewhat plain police detective, black hair and black eyes. Good evening, young men. I'm Naomesit Tsukachi, police detective, and I'll be in charge of the investigation concerning what happened today. Would you like some tea? Izuku replied politely with a yes, please, and a nod, while Bakugo grumbled a no thanks, his eyes still trying to burn his skull like that old comic book hero with laser eyes. Very well. I'm going to ask you simple questions if that's okay with you. Your names are Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya, they replied in unison. Age? 15-14 quirk. Explosion redacted. They made the police officer pause, but before he could ask the boy to explain himself, the other one exploded. The fuck you fucking bastard. You lied to me. Damn quirkless Deku. Midoriya ignored the rant of the teen who gripped his chair to not punch the other one in front of a police officer, but the rage was there. Could you elaborate on your quirk situation, young Midoriya? I know of your quirk, Detective Tsukachi. So pardon me, but I would prefer that you let me finish before trying to get an answer out of me. I manifested my quirk at the age of 4 after an error in diagnostic, but its effects were varied and no doctor could properly identify it. So I had to wait until 2 years ago to finally have someone redact my quirk into an official form. However, I fall under a peculiar category of quirk that are secretly kept tight by officials for reasons that I cannot disclose and are only accessible under the supervision of my personal advisor at the Quirk Registry Office or at the director of any hero course I would be entering in high school. Bakugo finally had enough and grabbed Izuku by the collar. And why the fuck am I hearing this just now, you damn nerd? You never asked, and the one time I tried to say that I had a quirk, you said, and I quote right, as if a deco like you could have quirk. Everyone said that Tsubasa Gramps showed you were quirkless, so it is true. Then you blow up an explosion in my face, and I didn't try anymore. I had other things to do. Detective Tsukachi reviewed the response of the green net in his head before realizing what kind of registration he was submitted to. This kid-esque quirk is to be kept as secretive as one for all. The people in that list are protected in such a way that all for one never heard of their existence. I see, young Midoriya. I will cease the interrogation on that part, but if you can answer me, what were your intentions when you decided to jump into this hostage situation? I had been attacked earlier by the same villain, and even though I was saved by All Might, I realized that the villain had escaped, but I knew what this villain was capable of because of this encounter, and when I realized that Katsuki was being taken hostage, I informed Death Arms of what both were capable of. And then pursued Tsukachi, not seeing the point of the kid putting himself at risk for this. Then Death Arms asked for someone with a more suited quirk, and when I looked into Kakin's eyes, I was already jumping into the fray before I had realized it. Tsukachi blinked, dear God. He is just like Toshi. I see, but you know that quirk usage and vigilantism are crime. Even at your age, you should be aware of. I didn't use my quirk. The statement was simple, but the fact that his human lie detector didn't react made Tsukachi pose. I'm sorry, but what? Unfortunately, those questions fall under the restriction of my QRP quirk regulation policies, so I will ask that you contact my advisor to continue, but I didn't use my quirk all day. No reaction. He needed to contact this kid's advisor if he wanted to make sense of that. Very well. Then, Yumba Kugo, I would like you to explain exactly what happened for the sludge villain to cause such damage in the street if he forced you, either by threatening your life or by physical pressure, to use your quirk. The blonde seemed to descend from whatever contemplation he was into before addressing him. The pile of garbage grabbed me from behind, so I tried to blast myself forward by charging explosion backward. When it didn't work, I tried to do the opposite. When it didn't again, I tried to blast its face away before trying to regain some air. I did that again and again until the fucker would let me go. The detective resisted the urge to facepalm. Seriously, the kid has a highly volatile quirk, and he tries that kind of thing. I'm sure he didn't want to destroy those apartments, but he should be happy that no one died in those conflagrations because the department wouldn't be so willing to cover this up for a youngster with potential. I see. I will note that you acted under pressure. He checked his notes again and decided to bring the kids to the heroes that apparently had a word for them. The meeting with Kimui Woods, Mount Lady, Death Arms, and his sidekicks was going unlike what he predicted. The Wood hero was actually apologetic about letting the kid put himself in danger, but the others. And what were you even thinking to act so? Reckless, says Death Arms while pounding his giant-sized finger into the green net torso. That's right, says the new heroine. Mount Lady, just behind him. Imagine what people would say about heroes if you had gotten hurt. Tsukachi doubted that it was the boy condition that preoccupied the blonde heroine, but rather the media catastrophe it would have been for the start of her career if the boy did get hurt. Meanwhile, the two sidekicks were praising the quirk of the Bakugo kid and offering him places as sidekick for when he hit the pro scene. Tsukachi was getting uneasy at the idea of the blonde getting a hero license with his state of mind. It was the second coming of Endeavor with more boom than necessary, not something you should encourage. Izuku looks blankly at the two heroes, signs of annoyance at the strength hero, before saying, seriously, I know that I don't have a license yet, but you clearly said that you weren't going to act unless someone had a suitable quirk. That's not what I meant, interrupted the white-haired man. I could think of at least 4 ways on the spot for you and the other heroes to get the hostage out of the way. Mount Lady could have focused a lot of air in her lungs to blow the villain out without having to enter the street, or she could have used her giant form hand to apply localized pressure upon the villain. Death Arms, you are specialized in the durability of your arms. If you managed to catch a burning scaffolding 2 years ago near downtown Mizudafu, then you would have been able to charge at the villain and the hostage without problems, considering you had the info about the explosions coming from his hands. Kamui Woods made a good call about rescuing civilians from the blaze, but he should have lingered when the situation was getting desperate and used his special move to get hold of the hostage and yank it from there. If push came to shove and Backdraft could have focused a high-pressure beam of water to literally clean the villain out before he could kill the hostage. Before the tension could escalate further, the door of the police station opened, and 3 people moved toward the assembly of pro-heroes, one of them carrying a feeling of doom known as a Mother-S wrath. Izuku, said a cheerful Inko Midoriya, dressed in a beautiful attire composed of black heels, a black dress with green highlights who cover most of her arms, exposing her shoulders and accentuated her slim figure as well as her curves. The strings maintaining her breasts from being exposed to the world, attached to a black choker around her neck, where a block ribbon complemented her long green ponytail, was bordering the lines between classy and vulgar, giving her an air of confidence and authority. A golden bracelet decorated with a strange rune, encompassed between 2 bat-like wings, was resting around her wrist. Policemen were already whispering, having recognized the appearance and fashion style of the royal vampire and the man that was following behind her with long silky white hair. However, Katsuki was drawing a blank as to who this person was. She seemed familiar with her long green hair and a ponytail, but the way she dressed and her general behavior, it couldn't be. Auntie Inko asked Katsuki, truly dumbfounded. The woman stopped producing killing intent in waves, just the time to acknowledge the presence of her best friend as son with a smile and a nod before sizing her son by one ear. Now, young man, do you have something to say for yourself? The mother asked, her tone of voice feeling more terrifying than all of his servants starving and her grip stronger than it had any right to be for a normal human being. Some part of his mind supplied that betting with a servant was bound to have some effect, but it was hushed away for his own sanity. The scolded boy had prepared his defense. However, he gave me authorization to intervene on the scene, he says, pointing towards Death Arms. I didn't see the harsh rebuttal that the pro-hero was about to make was stopped by the Mother-S next word. I will ask of you to choose your next word carefully. The voice was cold. I see even. Death Arms was pretty sure his feet were going numb, and he didn't know why. From what I managed to hear, you were going to let my surrogate nephew be suffocated because you were either too afraid to get a bruise or incompetent enough to make me question your qualifications as a protector of this city. My son may have acted in a very tight loophole of the law considering quirk usage in public, but doesn't he change the fact that he acted under the framework of the Good Samaritan law, and thus will we all part ways after the details of his involvement are recorded by Detective Tsukachi and his advisor. She finished this by pointing to the detective and the other woman that entered the building with her. With long black hair that seems to spike at their end, decorated with a white hairband, she would make for a traditional Japanese beauty if not for some traits, such as her blue eyes that betray some European heritage and the small sand blonde cowlick that bounce on her hair, as if it had a mind of its own. The woman, seeing this as her cue, introduced herself with a bow which emphasized the grace with which she carried herself. Seriously did the strand of hairband at a 45 angle as well. Good evening, fine sirs and lady. I am named Soratano, and I serve as Mr. Midoriya's advisor at the QRO. It is unfortunate that we had to meet in such complicated circumstances, but I'm certain that we can smooth things out. Her voice was kind, gentle, and she spoke with the dignity of either a maid in a great household or a lady raised in a rich family. So why could no one get their eyes away from the honest-to-God hogue that was put on her as if someone had pulled a prank on her? Katsuki was the brave red stupid one that decided to ask, what the fuck is this doing in your hair? Suddenly, all of Sora's black hair turned red and levitated in the air, but not the aforementioned piece of keratin structure who acted like it was looking around the room before becoming straight when it remarked it was Katsuki who spoke up. We, Don T talk. About. IT. The voice was now replaced by the raspy sound of some kind of demon. Everyone got the memo, even the never back down Bakugo, and didn't T comment on it. Bakugo SPOV. After a while the pros were gone, and the reunion in close door between Detective Dumbface, Annie Inko, and a Ho girl was in progress in one room, while Deku, the other guy, and Katsuki were left out. Katsuki was sure what the hell could Deku's quirk be, but did it seriously need all that shit to be done? He had seen it do quite some things. It boosted his speed, it pulled some kind of swords out of thin air, and it made it glow so it could inflict more damage to the slime bastard. What kind of quirk could he have, and most importantly, what the fuck happened to Annie Inko? Katsuki always had a soft spot when it came to the woman. She was kind, beautiful, and never shouted at him, unlike his hag of a mother. He never understood how Deku could have a dad that was never there and a super cool mother when he was stuck with his wimp father and his twada mother who bossed him around like he was their slave, always making him take out the trash and forcing him to go brush his teeth. And today, Inko was looking like she was made to be the poster girl for a gothic fashion magazine. How did it happen, in fact? When was the last time he saw her, he didn't go to her place, because it would be going at Deku's place, and he would prefer to die than to go there. His mom was friend with her, but honestly, he didn't listen to her 90 of the time, only when she brought the dangerous tone of voice. Katsuki asked 2 questions needed answers. Now, he made to grab Deku's shoulder, but the man he was discussing with gave him a look. He didn't notice the guy at first, nor the Aho girl for that matter, because of Inko, but now that he was looking at him, he couldn't help but be intimidated. The guy was standing tall at 1 meter, 91 centimeters, and with all the black and silver that surrounded his frame. His pale face was giving some kind of cold vibe, as if Katsuki was standing near the entrance of a cave that didn't see light and warmth of the sun for centuries. Deku chose that moment to notice his presence and turn around. Yes, what is it, Kakin? He glared at the nickname, but didn't bother. He had to know what the fuck happened to your mom. The two exchanged a look before looking back at him, as if nothing was weird around. What do you mean? She is just like usual. Don't fuck with me, Deku. Annie never dressed like that when we were younger. She always dressed in simple clothes, not a robe that must cost at least twice as much as the ones my mom is buying. And she never did that kind of murder vibe trick she used on that Death Arms dude. Okay, now they didn't look as if nothing was weird. They looked at him as if he was stupid. She has always managed to do that. In fact, I think she has started using it on me since I was 8 years old to prevent from or scold me for doing something stupid. As for the dress code, I can only blame Sensei, but she loves it, so what difference does it make? The man, Sensei, so he had to be a teacher or something, was looking at him with a stern look, but unlike his mom's glaring inferno, it was a cold, measuring one, as if he was evaluating every characteristic of him in an instant. I presume I shall introduce myself if you aren't going to. I am Vladimir Basarab Teeps, but be free to call me Vlad like the Izuku, and my dear Inko does. Pause, time, right the fuck out. My dear. He seriously called Annie Inko my dear. Who does he think she is married for fuck's sake? He guessed that Inko could be lonely since her husband was in another country or something, but to say loud and clear that she was cheating in the open like that. And why the fuck doesn't Deku react to that? Erizuku said with an unsure tone, seeing Katsuki go from wide-eyed disbelief to fuming with silent pondering right before him. Are you okay, Kakin? How can you be okay with him fucking your mom? He whispered, shouted at Deku, not wanting to attract the attention of the entire police station onto the matter. Well, Deku responded, searching for the right words to such a question. It's a little weird considering the relationship between Sensei and I, but I don't think that is a problem if she is happy with it. The fuck is this dumbass thinking? He yelled in his mind. As for their activities, punctuated the green net with a cough. The walls look thin, but they block the noise quite nicely. Plus, I live on the other side of the residence, so it helps. The hell you mean with the residence your apartment? doesn't he even cut the 70 square meters threshold? And what about your fucking dad? Izuku looked at Katsuki. Izuku generally didn't he give this look to people. Seriously, he forced this look to appear only once when Napoleon confused his shaving gel with wasabi. It was a look didn't he involve any magecraft, but could make you feel as if you were born to be the incarnation of the concept of dumb. And he was targeting Katsuki with its full force. Katsuki nearly crumbled at this, but he was a self-righteous hero that didn't he think cheating was an acceptable practice. Say something, you fucking Deku. It's been 4 years, Kakin. 4 years since what? And then, as Inko, Tsukachi, and Sora were exiting their little reunion, a miracle happened, Izuku swore. Since the divorce, and are moving, you dumbass. The impossibility of the situation made Katsuki's mind go blank, and he merely registered Inko, saying the word dinner, ride, residence, and parents before he was escorted to the car and got in. Midoriya residence, Mizuta-fu. Katsuki's mind finally came back when his door was opened by Inko. Welcome to the Midoriya residence, Katsuki. It was so much bigger than his own house. Even if he hadn't taken a good look, he could tell the thing was huge and could house at least half a dozen people. Izuku, sweetie, you can go and make dinner for everyone. Mitsuki and Masaru will be there in no time if you start cooking, Inko said with a bit of mirth in her voice. Deku let a small sight escape his mouth, but stiffened when Inko continued, but that doesn't mean you won't announce to the others what you did today. Others, Katsuki pondered, they must live with other people to afford the rent or something. Yes, Mom. Izuku made a beeline for what Katsuki assumed to be either the kitchen or a reserve room for ingredients. It's your favorite tonight, by the way. Inko was beaming at that. Wait, it's Deku who has cooking tonight. Ugh, it's gonna suck. Katsuki was escorted to some kind of dining room, where he could see a large zataku, a traditional Japanese low dining table where people eat, made in some good quality Zelkova wood. He guessed that up to 12 people could be squeezed around it for dinner. The rest of the room didn't radiate luxe, but it was clean and well-maintained, with the rush mat of the tatamis being a soft green like they were made yesterday. The wall's color was radiant in the yellow and orange spectrum, giving the room a warm and welcoming feeling that appeased even the explosive temper of Katsuki. You could find some flower pots and pictures here, and they're mostly of Izuku and Inko, as well as other people Katsuki never met. Inko grabbed some zabutons, Japanese pillows, from a nearby closet and gave him one, letting him choose where to sit. He decided to put himself at one end of the table, so he could face the large kitchen with both electronic and manual appliances. The kitchen was honestly too big for what it was. It looked like one of those kitchens you could see in hotels or school cafeteria when it comes to size, but the design with ceramic tiles and light shades of blue gave it a feeling of calmness and relaxation. Katsuki mostly noted the size of the rice cooker, who could easily contain at least 10 kilos of rice, and the sheer number of cooking plates on the cooktop. Shortly after he settled down, Deku came back carrying a clothes basket filled with what he assumed to be ingredients and started to clean himself and put on an UA Plus Ultra apron. His observation of Deku was interrupted by the arrival of a purple-haired, blue-eyed woman. Katsuki, while not especially active in the romance part of a teenage life, could openly admit that the girl was attractive. She was in her early or mid-20s and was dressed in a long red accordion skirt and white sleeveless blouse. She carried a green purse with golden embroidery in form of a bird deploying his wings, and she wore a small golden chain, which carried an equally golden cross around her neck. Good evening, the woman greeted before noticing the new arrival in the room. Oh, you must be Katsuki Bakugo. It's nice to meet you. I'm Martha. Martha Bethanium, but feel free to just call me Martha. How the hell do you know me, he asked, not with how much venom he usually did due to the presence the woman exuded. Her presence was soothing, like the warmth of a river in the summer. The woman seems to find his question amusing and giggled while pointing her finger at his hair. You surely take after your mother, boy. Wait. She is friend with the old hag. Katsuki felt more and more out of it as the day progressed. I exclaimed Izuku from the kitchen, already stirring something inside a skillet. Good evening, Martha-chan. How was your day? Good evening to you too, Izuku. Martha responded with a small smile. Well, my boss was greatly satisfied by my performance at the shop and made the employee of the month. As for the church, Father Shiozaki is feeling a little under the weather, so his daughter will be assisting me when it comes to catechism lesson for the next few days. Oh, I heard she was aiming for the UAS hero course as well, so maybe I will give her some training if that's okay with you. Sure, not a problem. Deku responded, already putting the contain of a pot into the oven, while Katsuki shifted his attention onto the woman at the word UA. Can you put the plates, please, the usual plus the 3 bakugo? Katsuki's realization that his mother was coming for dinner was crudely answered by the frantic footsteps of someone in the hallway before the door opened, revealing his mother Mitsuki Bakugo with an irate expression on her face. Katsuki, what the hell did you do to that street? His mother yelled at him, sizing him by both cheeks, stretching and twisting them to produce some pain, but mostly annoy her delinquent of a son. Stop it, you old hag, he yelled, nearly punching her at the audacity of her action. It was that slime bastard's fault for fucking with me. No, it's not, and you know it. This voice was the one of Masaru Bakugo, his father, usually so frail and meek, but now it conveyed all the disappointment the father felt toward his son. What Katsuki asked, not believing the way his father was looking at him. Your quirk is like mine in this aspect, Katsuki. We chose when we detonate our sweat. He punctuated this by exploding his sweat with the intensity and noise of a firecracker. So when we learned that the entire street was destroyed, not by trashing around from a villain, but by fire, who do you think we thought was responsible? D-Dad, Katsuki asked, truly anxious at the serious tone that he never saw before today. I'm glad you are okay, Katsuki. Truly I am. But you'll have to understand that if not for Inko and the fact you have a clean record, you would be in jail tonight. Katsuki let the word of his father sink in. Why would he be held responsible? He defended himself. Villain causes destruction, not heroes. He was a hero, not a villain. Was it because he wasn't strong enough, because he didn't defeat the slime fucker, because fucking Deku had to intervene? Before he could make sense of the issue, his father was already by the kitchen and bowed to Deku. Japan is a country where the act of bowing get a meaning by the way you bow before someone. If the bow is short, it's to greet someone. A more pronounced bow, usually around 30 degrees, is used for formal greeting. But here his father was bowing before Deku at 45 degrees, something called Saikiri, a bow that is extremely formal, or in this case to express extreme gratitude and humility. Thank you for saving my son, Izuku Masaru said, talking to Deku, who scratched his head in a sheepish manner. You don't have to bow like that, Uncle Masaru. I mean, I don't think it was because it was Kakin that I jumped in when I was standing in the crowd while heroes weren't moving. I saw his eyes, and even if at the moment I recognized Kakin, my legs were already moving before I realized what happened. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of 2 tall men. One was a brown hair and imposing bulk, while the other was a silver-haired man with tan skin. "Oh, hey, Masaru buddy," yelled the brown-haired one. His father's personality returned to wimp when an arm collided with his back in what was supposed to be a friendly gesture. "Nabulio-san." His father's voice was pained, so much that he could feel it. "Oh, Simon, man. I told you times and times again to call me Napoleon or at least Nap." The man exclaims, a smile plastered on his face. "You can at least do that, right?" His father chuckles lightly at the question and rubs the back of his neck. All right, all right." The 2 men then discuss as if they were old friends, and Katsuki's attention is brought upon the other man that entered. Steel. That was the only way to describe the presence of the individual that looks at him right now. Gray eyes like steel, tan-skinned that was forged under the sun, muscles lean and firm under the black shirt that makes some pro heroes look like those guys that hit the gym just to keep in shape. Everything about the man is screaming of some kind of steel aura. Something that was so hot that it could burn you if you approached too close, now cold and sharp enough to cut you if you didn't T-handle it carefully. Is that your son, Masaru-san the Tan Man, asks his father, his eyes never leaving Katsuki's gaze. Ah, Amiya-kun, yes, that is Katsuki. His father looks at him with the unspoken request to present himself. Katsuki Bakugo, he grumble, to show that he isn't pleased to be there before smirking at what he is going to say next future number one hero. The eyes of the man then turn sharper, narrowing on every visible feature of the blonde before. So you're right. What is that supposed to mean? Katsuki asks with barely restrained anger. Amiya-san sighed again at the teen's behavior before explaining. Firstly, I'm going to pass on your personality and motivations. If Endeavor managed to become the number 2 in ranking, then it's still possible for you. Now, let us start by your physical attributes. You are short. It's not a problem of how short someone is for the hero business, but rather that you are way too short for what you could expect being the son of Mitsuki-san and Masaru-san. You really need to take care of your growth now, before it can hinder you in the future, so watch your meal and diet plans carefully. Next, there is your habits. From just a look at your hands, I can tell that even if you're a smart kind and work hard on your academics, your main occupations are fist fights and video games with a ratio of 3 times video games and arcades for 1 brawl. As questionable as that behavior is, it doesn't help you be a hero. Now, let us talk about you being a pro hero. Izuku told me once that you can make explosions from sweat that is like nitroglycerin. Even if that is flashy and impressive, it is ineffective. All a villain has to do is to either cut off the oxygen supply to stop the combustion or to cut off your hands to make you effectively corkless. For the first problem, support items are way to go at it, but it could only get you so far. As for the second, even if it doesn't get to the extent of you having a maimed limb, you need to build up pain tolerance to both explosions and injuries. I'm not going to do the work for you, so you need to come up with your own training kit, but tell me, is exploding things the only things explosions can do? And with that, he left a stunned and unresponsive Katsuki Bakugo, directing himself to the kitchen. Yamiya knew something had happened today for the Bakugo to bring their child for dinner. Or, and more than possible, Izuku had done something that made the kid need to come to the residence tonight. He was going to get an answer and fast. Master, he says, entering the kitchen where Izuku was finished preparing some buns, meaning that tonight was an Inko's favorite. Conclusion, his master fucked up. Hard. Ah, Nisan, good evening. Izuku responds, far too cheerful for some reason. What happened today, his tone, is measured and conveys all the seriousness about the matter. I met All Might today, the younger of the two says. Not a lie, but don't think that it's going to save you from what's coming your way. The former counter-guardian replied to the news of his master encountering the number 1 hero. Yeah, Mom wants me to tell you all during dinner. Yamiya sighs, far too much today, but interacting with teenagers is always a pain in the ass. How'd it go with All Might, I mean? I asked him a question. At first, he tried to dodge it, trying to convince me that if I didn't have what it took to accept that people are going to die because I'm not strong enough, then it would be better if I entered the support course. I sense a bit coming. But after I grabbed onto him and we landed on a nearby build ARGH, Izuku yelled when his archer class servant hit him on the head with a metallic ladle. I know it was stupid, but let me finish. You're so much worse than me, was the only reply along with a shake of the head. Then what happened? He explained to me why he wanted to be a hero, to be the symbol of peace, and what it was like to be a hero. He looked into the eyes of the green net at this sentence and saw it. A spark that was dimmed by hardships and failures some years ago. He said that to be a hero was a leap of faith, a dive into the unknown in the hope of saving as many as possible when confronted by odds that seems impossible. Archer smirked at those words. The number 1 hero had quite a way of seeing heroics, it seems. That question about his heroic way was something that seemed to haunt his master for the past 2 years. After the colossal mess that was his 5th servant, that was understandable. Heroism was always something that could be debated in the Midoriya household. For Emiya, it was a question of wishful thinking and his blind chase after Kiritsugu, Amiya's way of the many rather than the few. For Midoriya, it was all about how screwed you'll get in the end. For Napoleon, the point of heroism was that to be above all the hardships that were on your way. For Vlad, you could only be called a hero at the very end of your journey, and even there, it wasn't impossible for you to be called a villain. For Martha, all was designed to give you a chance, and it was up to your mortal shoulder to do your best. And so, if his master's smile was anything to go by, he will be a hero that jumps into the fire, prepared and hoping for the best. I see, he says with a small smile before grabbing a knife and chopping some pickles to complement the taste of tonight's meal. Then I hope you didn't do something so stupid that I need to let the witch go wild on you tonight. The young master blushed like a tomato, and then he realized what his word actually meant, and his skin suddenly got a pale complexion and the chibi version of his ghost leaving through his mouth. I am. So, fucked. Midoriya had a hard but pleasant day. You would think that being a stay-at-home servant would be an easy and quite boring task, but the reality wasn't what you would expect. Certainly the day started quite pleasantly, waking up in her chamber and workshop with the sight and voice of her adorable master and, in some way, surrogate little brother. Then came a refreshing shower to let the remnants of slumber leave her body and take care of her beautiful body. Finally awake and presentable, she took her place at the end of the table, next to Maria, and ate with her usual grace and appetite the delicious breakfast from the ex-counter-guardian Emiya that she liked to call boy. The term just seems to piss him off, and she loves that. You could think that Midoriya would be sad to be the only one that remains in the house during the day, while everyone else had their jobs, or school in Izuku-sama's case, to attend to, but no, Midoriya was living the dream. She could take care of the house as much as she liked, water her plants and herbs in the garden square, and do the laundry of her master with the care and attention of a devoted big sister. Oh yes, it was a taxing job considering the size of the residence, the specific of all the ingredient she managed to bring back to life from her era, as well as the religious devotion she vowed to her cute Izuku-sama. This seemingly boring life, something you expected from a servant and a Magus, too bad for you, because that was the life that Midoriya chose for herself, and she wasn't about to care about the opinion of some ruffians. Though she could admit that she felt bad about being the only one that didn't bring anything when it came to the living expenses or a form of rent, not that anyone in the residence felt like that, but it still stunk at her pride, especially as a royalty. And that is how, 4 years ago, she made a name for herself on the internet as a cosmetic craftswoman under the name of Darius, literally fleece in her natal tongue. Because if there was one thing that she wanted to remember from her legend, it was the golden fleece of the winged ram Chrysomalos. The fleece in itself wasn't that much of a deal. Rarer and more useful ingredient than the hair of a half-god existed during the age of God. No, what the fleece represented for her was how she gave up to the curse of love. All the tasks given by her father to Jason, in order to obtain the golden fleece, were largely due to her potions, her magic, and her intellect. The fool would have run like an idiot against the fire-breathing oxen, or let his men met their demise against the dragon-toothed warriors. It was her love, sick heart, and mind, all of those feelings coming from the goddess of love, that permitted the hero scout to succeed in those endeavors. And when her father started to suspect something was up and planned to bring down the scum that dare use her, the curse made her act and warn Jason that they needed to act fast. She put the guard of the demigod-esque symbol of kingship, a dragon of all things, to sleep and grabbed it in the middle of the night. That was the moment where her destiny got from bad to worse. She let Jason take it from her hands with a bright smile on her face. To anyone else, it could seem unimportant and understandable, but not to Midoriya. Her family always had a good relationship with animals and mystical creatures. Midoriya, more than any of her siblings, and the time spent on the island of her Aunt Circe, chasing and caring for all sort of animals and creatures was some of her fondest memories. Chrysomalos was one of those creatures she cared about. Even though they didn't share that much of time before his sacrifice, the talking sheep was a suave orator and had his way around puns and other jokes. And yet, she gave what remained of her friend to that buffoon for a kingdom he didn't give a damn about. She relieved those hard times in her mind every moment she didn't have something else to occupy her mind. Worst of all, she imposed those memories and so much more on her master because of the dream cycle. Izuku-sama was always there for her, and he would often wrap his arms around her during the night when he was still a child, trying and succeeding in soothing her pain. When they discussed the event of her life, she decided of a new resolve for herself in this world. She wouldn't let this go. Medea Daris would be the kind of woman that would cling to her hero and her happiness. Why? She was a witch. Izuku-sama's witch, and she would never disappoint him. You disappoint me, Izuku-sama. Medea shoots, first among from the group of servants around tonight's dinner with the for the first time complete Bakugo family. The dinner tonight was composed of Inko's favorite dish, a burger filled with a homemade minced meat, some oven-cooked potato rosti, and 2 slices of bacon, accompanied by the usual vegetable marta received from the church father Shiozaki, namely tomatoes, lettuce, and red onions. All of its size for the appetite of Inko, Izuku, and the servants. To complete the serving of this colossal German dish, Izuku prepared some noodle, boiled dumplings made out of mashed potatoes alongside flour to give it a firmer body and seasoned with a lot of herb that complement the fat, heavy burger quite nicely. But no matter how talented the master was to make her favorite German and French dishes, Inko made it clear to her son that he was to explain what he did today to the whole family and deal with the consequences of those actions. But the teen tries to explain himself, but a single glare from his big sister was enough to make him shut up. "I'm not finished," Medea interrupted, her napkin removing the few remains of her burger from the corner of her mouth, while the Bakugo child was thinking about throwing the towel down when he finished the first half of his sandwich and nearly collapsing at his first bite from a foodgasm. "While what you did was indeed heroic and prevented him from dying a stupid death," she says, pointing her hand toward the blonde, "it doesn't change the fact that you decided to expose yourself while the situation was not a threat that was unmanageable by heroes. Thanks to that, we will be on thin ice with Sorodano and her division." Napoleon decided to get the message across. "What you did was stupid. Why can't you learn not to do it?" His voice was purposely less serious than what the situation required. "Kid, I know exactly what was going through your mind at the time, but you decided to wait for that stupid piece of plastic named certificate to do those kind of things. You promised and were accepted it after the whole shit show that was 2 years ago. What changed?" Izuku seemed to hesitate for a few seconds before saying, "I met All Might today. The Bakugo family sans Katsuki and Martha did a spit take with their tea. What?" Izuku ignored them and continued, I asked him the question like I did with any of you." "What did he said to that?" The question came from Vlad, his eyes narrowing at his lover's child and master. The question was a sore spot for him because his legend revolved around the people he killed, not the one he cared about and defended. "That I got all wrong. I shouldn't be expecting my journey to start with the entrance exam or my first mission as a certified pro hero. To be a hero is a leap of faith. I should be prepared to save others, not prepare for others to be saved." A round of laughter came from everyone except Katsuki, who just seemed confused by the nonsense statement, and Emiy, whose tan skin was showing the small sign of a blush. His mother was the first to come back with a "Sweetie, that was the most Emiya thing you said this year." Medea was failing to hide her smile behind her hand. "I don't know if I prefer this over the people die when they are killed or his I have legs when he was 8. Martha and Napoleon were rolling on the floor. What they tried to say and respond to their master embarrassed replies of "Stop it" were lost in their incoherent laughter. And those continued the night at the Midoriya residence. Outside of the police station, Mizutefu. Naomasa was just out for tonight, when the blonde hair of his best friend poked around a corner. Tashinori hissed from the nearby alleyway, a nervous look on his face, looking left and right like a teenage girl not wanting to be seen at night by her parents. Nao Mesa, he whispers, yells in the empty vicinity of the police station. Over here. He chuckled lightly at the antics Tashinori could come up with. Toshi, what are you doing? I need a favor from you, the blonde stuttered, making the detective raise an eyebrow. Okay, what is it, or more specifically, why are you so worked up about it? It's that green-haired kid from earlier. Midoriya, what do you want about him? He already got an earful from Death Arms, and he gave back quite the sass if you ask me. So don't go bite more than you can chew, Toshi. He responds with humor, knowing how the All Might was quite the softy outside of work. I think he has multiple quirks. The symbol of peace reply, nervous sweat on his forehead, and Nao Mesa now notice his friend's suit looks crumpled and was put in a hurry. You interrogated him, right? Can you tell me why I can't find anything on him? I've been shuffling through the files available in my agency. I came up with nothing, and Sir Naitai is still pouting and not responding to my text for ditching our meeting about a potential successor because of the sludge villain. Nao Mesa understood the fear behind his friend's words. All for One's body was never found. Even when All Might's punch should have ripped his head out of his body, you never were prepared enough when dealing with a villain that survived for more than 200 years planning and manipulating. That in paperwork at the All Might Hero Agency after his psychic-esque departure was always utter and complete chaos. Tashinori, the use of his full name, calmed the man down a bit. The kid is not on files because he is on a classified list at the QRO. The same kind as yours, in fact, a rare quirk that no one really managed to point out before 2 years ago, and an accident made it impossible to contest what the kid was saying is false. What kind of quirk does he have? Can't say. What? I signed a document the kid's advisor gave me. A particular thing only usable by her department, and some secret services that are so deep-rooted that they're considered as a fable or urban legends among detective and other law enforcement. Basically, it makes it that when I talk about Izuku Midoriya's quirk actual effects, the people mentioned by the Geas, as they call it, will be notified of my location for the next 48 hours, the intentions I had when divulging the subject, and who exactly my mind considers I'm talking to. Then why are you telling me about it so freely? Nao Mesa smirked. I knew that a kid who would deliberately jump into a hostage situation when you were around out of time and energy would definitely be someone you would be interested in and ask for you to be included in the allowed information list on my side. In brief, I can talk to you about everything related to the Geas up to the point of the quirk. Beyond that, I am forced to arrange a meeting with Mississippi Midoriya and Mississippi Tano to allow you in on the kid's quirk. What if your sister or anyone else hears about that? If the information is leaked through my side, I am notified first and can deal with it accordingly. If I fail, then the contract punish me. Punish you? The smile he gave was strained. You don't want to know. The apt description of what Sora Tano and the Royal Vampire would do to him if words got out will haunt him for the weeks too. Comes that S for sure. Tashinori was a soft boy. He doesn't deserve that. Okay, if he isn't linked to All for One, then I would like to push for him to be a candidate to inherit One for All. Didn't you just tell me that Night Eye had one for you already? Should I guess I'll meet Night Eye's candidate first, but I would still like to do something about young Midoriya. To not lose that link with him until he joins UA at least. I'll ask Nizu to think of something. Nao Mesa's sweat dropped at that. There was a way for a pro hero to be linked to a promising hero in the making, and Tashinori wasn't seeing it. The two began to make their way to a ramen shop. Tashinori's stomach was still missing, and he would get an earful from Recovery Girl at his next checkup, but damn, he was dying for some ramen since coming back to Japan. Midoriya Residence, Mizudafu City. The next morning, Yamiya woke up at 6:30. Unlike the other servants, he wasn't one who lays around in bed and was usually the first to wake up. What was different this morning, however, was that unlike every day, Izuku came back from the dojo to take a shower. Finding it strange, He made his way toward the dojo and silently advanced towards the teen who was supposed to be training like usual. He found Izuku sweating a lot more than usual, as if he upped his training not to the next level, but to the one even beyond. But the thing that stood out the most to him was that the circular target of archery was riddled with arrows, a lot of arrows. Some had definitely missed at first. His reality marble confirmed it for him when he looked at Izuku's training bow. But this time, Izuku persevered. He shot again and again for hours since before dawn, and when he managed to hit a target for the first time in 2 years, it was like a dam broke loose, and he shot volley after volley of arrows into the center. It was only 10 minutes ago, when a last arrow in his quiver was emptied into the bullseye, splitting one of his previous shot in half, that he collapsed onto the floor, a smile on his face. It wasn't T Unlimited Blade Works that told him that last part. No, it was the fact that the kid still had this smile, even in his sleep. Maybe that's what Plus Ultra means in this world. Muse the servant, picking his master up in his arms, ready to let the teen sleep in for the day. Thanks for watching.